Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Film Snobbery Live. I am your host, Nick Baisley, and I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Jerry Cavallaro. Say hi to the folks here, out there, and in places.
Hi to the folks everywhere. There we go. That covered everything.
I like how you sum that up. I have a fantastic show for everyone today. I am really, really happy with tonight's guest. I'm really happy we're able to get him. The man is a man who has been present in the independent film world for a very, very long time. He's branched out. He's got his fingers on a little bit of everything. You guys might know him as the former founder, or the founder of Film Threat, no longer with there. The credit goes over now to our good friend Mark Bell. I give him credit because, again, it was very, very nice of Film Threat to have us out to Park City this past Sundance and Slam Dance. He's also an author. He's the author of the Ultimate Film Festival Survival Guide. You can find out some of it about his other projects we're going to talk about, including FetishVIL. You can also see him weekly on G4. Further ado, all pretense aside, the man is a legend in independent film. Let's talk to him right now. Everyone, please welcome Mr. Chris Gore to the show. Hey, Chris.
Thanks. How am I actually going to live up to that intro? That's amazing. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Now, I said all that to say this. This is actually a Batman intervention.
Really?
Yeah, we need to address, you have a problem when it comes to the man in the cape and cowl. How's everything going?
Everything's great. I don't know why I need a Batman intervention. I feel akin to him because he is sort of a guy that I'm into DIY crafting and making. He makes his own stuff. He makes his own weapons, stuff for his utility belt, makes his costume, his car, fashions that. And he's a guy who has the luxury in his career to kind of go off and do all types of things. Sure, my wealth is not nearly that of Bruce Wayne, because I'm definitely in the 99%. But I love that. That's why I spun off my other Twitter account, @BatChrisGore, just to sort of take that obsession and put that over there.
Now, who is your Alfred in this case?
I don't think I have an Alfred.
Because I'm pretty sure that Mark Bell is your Robin. I'm not sure now if he's graduated, now that he's the head of Film Threat. I think now we move him to Nightwing.
Yes, he's definitely Nightwing. You're going to have to find a different kind of outfit, though. The Nightwing costume is pretty bad. But yeah, look, I'm a big fan of Batman, and it just sort of... I'm a fan of, like, mainstream stuff and stuff that's not so mainstream. I sort of cross the gamut, and Batman is definitely an obsession.
And what other kind of things, over the years... have you you've always had kind of one foot in the mainstream, one foot in the indie world. I mean, you've got your show the show that you're on over on G4, and then you've got, you ran Film Threat for many years, which kind of was very indie, both the magazine and then, for a short period of the website as well. How do you kind of balance that? And have you ever been called out on anything like that? Like, oh, he's a sellout because he's on TV.
I have been, called that, you're a sellout because you're doing this, but not so much recently, probably not in the last 10 years. I really think early on, especially if you watch me on television, I'll cover the mainstream releases that are the big releases that week on DVD, but then I'll also sneak something else in, like a review of Winnebago Man, on the documentary that just, that came out on DVD or something. So, they do look to me to offer suggestions for other things we should be covering, and it's got to fit in with the show too. So with that audience, but I've always got the indie heart. I just happen to do some things that could be considered mainstream. Although, come on, if you really watch Attack of the Show, that's not a mainstream show at all. The Today Show is a mainstream show. Attack of the Show is actually, I think it's edgy. It's edgy for regular TV and definitely pushes the line, nearly crossing it even on cable TV.
No, and you've got a bunch of other things that you have your fingers into. One of them is a new podcast that you've been doing for a little while now called Pod Crash with that Chris Gore. And
yeah,
where did that come from?
Well, it really came from, for the last year, people have been saying, oh, you really should do a podcast, and it should be about DVD reviews or movie reviews. And I looked at the landscape of podcasts that were out there, and there are a lot of podcasts that, were about movies. There were a lot of movie podcasts. There were a lot of movie review podcasts. There's a lot of, so I said, I don't want to do just that. And then also I don't want to be limited. I don't want to be, I've constantly struggled to not be the movie guy. And I get pigeonholed for that. And that's certainly a huge area of influence for me. It's a huge part of my life, film. But there's a lot of other parts too. Everything from crafting to music obsession, to, making my own films and projects, to cars, tech, sex. And I wanted to be able to actually address each of my obsessions in the form of a podcast. So I thought, well, how about, I'm just really lazy. I didn't want to do all the work of doing a podcast. I thought, I'll just appear on other people's podcasts, and then every week I'll do a new podcast, and then it kind of features their podcast, and I can introduce your podcast to my audience, and if they like this conversation, then they'll discover new podcasts. What I didn't realize is how much work it is in the editing process.
Yeah.
Like taking all the different various forms of audio and then putting them together and then putting them into a context, because I really just play highlights on my show. So Podcrash, if you want to look it up on iTunes or Stitcher, it just offers every episode is different. We've done an episode about Doctor Who. We did an episode about, we went to Dr. Susie's Speakeasy where they do live sex acts. We do, I'm not kidding. There have been some movie podcasts. I just did one about parenting called Geek Dad. So it really is all over the map, and it gives you a taste of other podcasts, while at the same time I'm kind of your guide through them. So if you don't get completely annoyed hearing my voice, which I got to say I honestly do, but I hear it all the time, then hopefully you'll enjoy the show. But yeah, Podcrash is it's just a way for me to explore other areas of my obsessions other than movies and Batman.
And you and I were talking a little bit before the show, and it seems like you and I have a very similar kind of if anything, I think you're the Batman of World 1, and I'm like the Batman of the New 52, which means I'm completely horrible. I'm kidding. But, it's almost like, we've kind of all been forced into the roles that we've been in, and then we've had to kind of branch out and find ways to kind of survive in that, in ways regarding that world. You know what I mean? Like in your case, it was like, okay, I'm going to do film threat, and then I'm going to branch out and I'm going to be a director, or I'm going to be someone hosting a show, or I'm going to do a podcast. Or for me, it's been, okay, I'm going to do this website, and now I'm going to do this podcast, and then I'm going to do interviews at film festivals or whatever it is. Is it weird being kind of thrust into the spotlight of these different things, and does that happen to you kind of on accident, or does that happen, how do you feel when someone's just like, oh, by the way, Chris, yeah, we're going to put you on camera and you're going to be kind of the face of this thing that we're doing?
Well, that's weird, because all the projects that I've done have been ones that were motivated by me, whether it be a book I wrote, whether it was creating Film Threat, whether it was doing a film like my Big Fat Independent Movie, or starting this podcast, Podcrash. The only thing of all of those, when I look at all the things in my repertoire, all the sort of career achievements, the only thing that was not planned that I resisted was my television career. It was something where I got a phone call out of the blue from someone who was reading the Film Threat email newsletter, which was when the printed magazine went on hiatus for a period in the late 90s, and we put out an email newsletter, and then that morphed into a website. Someone called out of the blue and just said, hey, we'd love your opinions in your writing. Would you consider being on television? This was a show called The X Show, and I went and did one audition, but I had no interest in doing it because I was writing the first edition of the Ultimate Film Festival Survival Guide. I said, I don't know, this doesn't really interest me. This is dumb being on TV. This isn't a job, this is moronic. So I did that audition with sort of that idea in mind, and then when I left, it just made them want me more, the fact that I had no interest in that job. And then every TV gig I've gotten after that has been the same thing where, I don't really feel like being on TV. It's kind of a hassle. It interrupts the things I want to do that actually seem important to me. And so then that's how I just keep getting TV gigs. It's sort of like, my lack of interest is the thing where they just say, now we want you to do this.
It's like dating women. It's like if you ignore them long enough, they'll want you.
That's exactly it. It's sort of like I say to my friends, it's like, the who gives a shit attitude is like a cologne that attracts vagina. So I just never really cared, and I've been on G4 now. It's coming up 7 years. I've been doing film coverage and junket interviews and whatever they're asking me to do. I'm always on standby, but generally work like 2 days a week, which is totally gets in the way of these other things I prefer to do. But I feel incredibly lucky to be able to have that position, and people like that show. And it's the first time really, because I've done other shows before, the first time really being on Attack of the Show where I get to be myself on camera.
And how they don't really censor you that much in terms of you play by the rules, so
Well, I can't say fuck, and I can't say things like cunt, although I can mispronounce swear words. I've said things like that Joel Schumacher is a real shatheed, so I can actually say that on camera if I mispronounce. And I've actually used American Sign Language, ASL, to sign swearing like bullshit. So I know what the limitations are, and knowing the audience, I kind of scale the conversation for that. But I do think it's my way of leaking basically radical ideas into the mainstream by just introducing the audience to a film or a filmmaker they might not have known about if I wasn't there in that position. Because I'm not the kind of lazy moviegoer that just says, well, this is what's playing at the theater. I guess that's the movie I'll go see. I hate that attitude. I've always hated that attitude, and I've always sought out stuff at, whether it be rep houses or other art houses, as they used to be called. I mean, the art house is kind of dead now, but film festivals have kind of replaced the art house, and I've always sought out media and alternative film, and the same goes actually for music. If I'm interested in, I can't listen to normal radio and haven't, I think, since I was a kid. There'll just be, you know what I mean? I've always had to seek out, and the things that I'm interested in aren't the things that are just readily available or there. I have to go search for them.
No, I completely understand. I mean, I was always the dude with the mixtape because I only wanted to hear the shit I really liked and sought out. I didn't like the mainstream radio either. When satellite radio took hold, both Sirius and XM, I immediately started. I picked up a Sirius little satellite radio, and that's what I listened to for a while.
I did as well. I picked it up the day Howard Stern went live. I think it was like 2006. 2005, and I love it. I love my Sirius. I like Saturday Night Safety Dance. First Wave.
Yeah, for me, First Wave and the '80s. That's typically where I live. That and the classic rock. I'm a hair metal freak. So
yeah, that stuff, and then Howard. I mean, it's like
Howard.
It's my Howard player. So. So I've always sought that stuff out, and then the internet really just makes all of that possible. Now, in 2 clicks, you can find whatever fetish of porn you're looking for, whatever music you're looking for, and so culture has become fragmented into the teeniest, tiniest, hair-like slices of pie now. There's really not a mainstream culture. I think the last mainstream culture event really was the release of the Star Wars movies, or the Star Wars prequels, because that was something that united a lot of people. It was their gateway movie, in a sense, the movie that made them fall in love with movies. And I don't know. There's nothing as big, nor will I think they'll be as big. Although Dark Knight Rises looks pretty promising.
We got to go back to Batman for a second. Yeah, Dark Knight Rises, I'm really looking forward to. Although I'm also got to throw in there Joss Whedon's The Avengers. If anyone could pull off.
My concern is with the Marvel movies. They haven't learned the lesson that Christopher Nolan did, or that you can make an adult film about a subject like superheroes. And The Dark Knight, if you ask me, is as adult as a Godfather or Godfather 2, or Heat. I mean, if they would have allowed it, you need to see a Batman film with an R rating, but see how far you could push it. I mean, maybe the next incarnation of the Batman, which I'm sure they're going to continue, it'll be like a character that'll be like James Bond.
Right.
They'll just make another series with another actor portraying it and another visionary behind it, hoping. The Dark Knight was an adult movie. It was not for kids. It wasn't pandering to make a Happy Meal toy. So I think that the Marvel movies, unfortunately, when you look at them, while satisfying experiences, sort of leave out the fact that, you could make these a little bit more adult.
But do you think that if when you look at like say a very adult version of a comic book movie like Zack Snyder's The Watchmen, do you think that, which was R-rated, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah,
I mean,
but I mean, the comic book, there's no way to have done that. I mean, the comic book was very R-rated.
Right,
the comic book has, you've got rape in a comic. Not a lot of comics have rape. How many in the New 52, DC's New 52, have rape scenes? Not a lot. So
I don't know. Batman and Robin's, suspectfully close relationship has always been a topic of interest to me, and Alfred is always standing by far too casually. But I want to talk about you had mentioned kind of, dallying into directing with My Big Fat Independent Movie, and you at the time were still doing Film Threat. When you split off and started doing your own films, was there any kind of backlash from people saying like, okay, well, you reported on films, you're an industry guy kind of now that, you know everyone, so yeah, it makes sense. Look, you go out and make your movie and get it into all the festivals because you know everyone now. Or was it, oh, this guy, what was the motivation by wanting to do your own movie? I mean, what was it?
Well, just a point of clarification, I didn't direct My Big Fat Independent Movie, although someone on Wikipedia put that. It was directed by a guy named Phil Zlotarinsky.
Right.
I co-wrote it with two other comedy writers, and then I produced the film. I put together all the creative pieces of the puzzle, so to speak. That's not my first film. I mean, I had made I made a short film called Red, which actually, if you go to Etsy.com and you look up Red with Lawrence Tierney, look up Red or with my name, and if you put in the offer code PodCrash, I'll give you $10 off. But it's funny that I worked in that plug. But I'd made a lot of films. I made animated films from the time I was 9 years old, hours and hours worth of animated films through high school, made a lot of short films through college. And my intention was to do Film Threat as a tour of duty as a way to meet some of my hero filmmakers and then segue off into filmmaking, whatever form that takes, writing, producing, directing. With My Big Fat Independent Movie, I thought, well, this is a logical next step because I love spoof comedies. At the time, some of my favorite spoof comedies by Mel Brooks, Young Frankenstein, Blazing Saddles, and aspired for My Big Fat Independent Movie to be the ultimate spoof parody movie of indie film. And I think the film, like at the time, I give myself like a C+ when I look at it. Mm-hmm. I really think maybe need another pass on the writing. But it's not as bad as it was made out to be. When it came out, I really felt that there was a big professional jealousy because I was still doing Film Threat. I was still doing Film Threat, the website, and the movie was hitting festivals, and every festival it came to, it sold out and screenings were added because it stood out from a lot of the stuff that you saw at film festivals, and it made fun of a lot of it. It made fun of it made fun of Sundance. It made fun of, a lot of the humor was very inside. It made jokes about subtitles, and you can find it on Netflix. It's not as bad as it was made out to be, but really I think there was a lot of professional jealousy, and it's one of those things where it's like, I'm not, strategically, I'm trying to do something, like whether it's writing a book or doing something else, I'm not doing that against anyone. I'm just doing that because that's what, I'm compelled to do that, and I feel there's a lot of, I experienced a lot of professional jealousy, and I think that's, who's this guy to say this? And I think knowing the source, what can I say? I got a lot of backlash from it, and it was expected. I'm hoping that the future projects, that will be washed away. Because if you look at Film Threat, the magazine, and you look at the Film Threat, the website when I was doing this, there's a lot of humor there.
Right.
And especially in the print magazine, there was a lot of humor. And that
you were very counterculture. You felt, Film Threat, reading it back in the day made me feel like I was reading a zine. It was like part Mad Magazine, part indie film, part cult film thing. It was definitely a mishmash, but it was all my obsession, and I've always been. Look, I was the class clown when I was a kid, and always had an affection for comedy, whether it be in my writing or whatever. I feel like it was the way in my family that we would cope with each other, because if there was ever a conflict, there wouldn't be some big drama. We would just make fun of each other until we realized we were being an asshole. And by we, I mean myself. But the humor was how we just really dealt with issues. That really just came from like my mom and my grandparents, my dad. We just all had a great sense of humor, and that sort of permeated
film threat, and it definitely permeated any sort of other work I do on camera. Like when I'm doing my bit on DV Tuesday every week, I feel like I'm always working in lines, hopefully, that are funny. And in a way, I'm practicing some stand-up bit or seeing if a joke works or not. But yeah, so I mean that's not so present in where Mark Bell has taken film threat. I'm actually glad it's much more serious. It's taken seriously, because that was the thing that actually I think kind of diminished film threat, is that I would have a sense of humor about things, and it was a way for me to give a finger to someone without actually giving them the finger.
And
rather than saying fuck you, which is confrontation. It's confrontational when you say fuck you.
Right.
But if you point out a truth that makes someone look like an idiot, it elicits a laugh. And that laugh can actually be kind of painful, which is why I think I built up maybe a group of people that aren't quite fond of me, and I don't give a shit. I don't really care.
You started that way back before the internet was there and the snark of the internet was there. So when you said fuck you and you were kind of giving the finger to some people, I think that when people do that on the internet now, there's, people can recognize the snark for where it is when you say it in print or you say it in an interview or something. I think that it comes off completely different. And
exactly.
And I think that people don't get the humor.
We were doing that, exactly. You hit the nail on the head. We were doing that back, in a print magazine, and it was jarring to people. I mean, we were banned from the Toronto Film Festival because of an article that we wrote, kind of joking around and making fun of it. And we talked about the parties. We also covered the movies, but we talked, we were drinking and writing about it. And then the next year, we just made fake IDs and went back there under different names with a fake magazine called Film Form: The Art of the Cinema. And I created this whole fake press kit for a movie magazine, sent it into Toronto. I recorded a message from a woman who said, "You're absolutely banned. You're not allowed at this festival." Came up with completely false names, went in and picked up my badge, and then went to the festival. People couldn't believe that we did that. So we did a lot of things that pissed people off, and I look back, maybe I'm not so proud of, but it was really kind of like, I don't like that sort of self-righteousness, that sort of snooty self-importance. I mean, I take what I do seriously. I don't take myself seriously.
I completely, I'm right there with you. I mean, I find that I mean, for lack of a better term, snobbiness. Now, we've always used FilmSnobbery as kind of a tongue-in-cheek, almost term of endearment type of thing. But I mean, when I go to like the larger festivals like Sundance or South by Southwest, there are definite pockets of just snobbery. It is what it is. And I mean, Slam Dance, I didn't see it very much at, because everyone there seemed to be more. It was really weird to see the difference between the top of Main Street versus the bottom of Main Street. But we actually do have a question from the audience, a couple questions actually, and one of them actually has to do with something you and I were talking about a little bit before the show, when we were talking about filmmakers and making movies, and do you have to live in LA type of thing. Devin Watson here, DKLON on, never figure out how to pronounce his name on like the internet, but I know like his actual name. Says, does Chris feel that Hollywood is necessary now that all there is to make now at all to make a quality film, given the DSLR revolution and online distribution? Do you need to be in Hollywood?
The answer to that is no. You do not need to be in Hollywood, and there's a couple good reasons for that. One, it's highly competitive here. I like being here because I like the sort of dog-eat-dog atmosphere. I think it makes what I do better. And there is some more work here. But when you look at there's so many television shows being shot in New Mexico, in Vegas, in other parts of the country. I mean, John Waters is based in Baltimore. Richard Linklater is in Austin, Texas. Gus Van Sant is in Portland. I mean, you can be wherever you are and make something of quality. The problem is going to be access to talent. And by talent, I mean SAG actors. Most of the SAG actors are New York, LA, and that's, to me, the greatest flaw that I notice in projects are, the actors, they went to the local theater troupe because I guess, they do theater, so they must know film acting. Two totally separate things. So you don't need to be in LA per se. However, I do think you need to draw on LA talent. So while you may be based in Seattle, Washington, you could hire talent, SAG actors from LA, and or shoot your project in LA or outside of LA, but you can still remain based in Seattle, Washington. One thing Richard Linklater told me once, which I thought was really interesting about the whole, because I remember I knew him early on when he did Slacker. He sent me a copy of it on VHS, which was a version that was 20 minutes longer. which was cool. And then met him later, and he invited me to a screening of Dazed and Confused, which I promptly brought a case of Bud Light to the screening and passed it out to everybody because it was the second time I'd seen it. I was so excited to see it again. But Linklater was saying that his whole trick is that he was going to stay in Austin, Texas, because that's where the talent was. Doesn't mean that he wouldn't hire LA actors for sure. I mean, the casting is done, a wide net is cast, and frankly, the better actors, they're in LA. But what he does is, when Linklater comes to town, he'll talk to an agent or manager, someone or a studio, and if he wants to have a meeting with someone, he says, hey, I'm in town for the week, out of Austin, Texas. What'll happen is all those people that it would be difficult to say, for me, living in LA, being here anytime, oh, you live here, it's no big deal, we can meet anytime. But because Linklater's here for a short period of time, there's only a window that he's available to meet, people will cancel other meetings to meet with him because he's in from out of town.
That's like that's like going to Cats in New York. Everyone's just like, oh, Cats will be there forever till the day it isn't.
Yeah, exactly. So I kind of feel like with Linklater, what's wise about that is that, look, I'm just going to be production based. It doesn't mean I'll just make movies in Austin, Texas necessarily, but that's where I live. It's where my family is. That's where So it's the people I know. It's where he draws inspiration, but it doesn't mean that he won't make movies in all different parts of the country. It doesn't mean that he wouldn't fly to LA for a week or two and then have a series of meetings that then makes you more important in a way. Like, I'm here in town only for this short window. If you want to meet with me, get in line. And I actually think that strategically, that's smart. I think you have to know why you're moving here, what your goal is. And I think this is a thing I try to stress in my film festival book, The Ultimate Film Festival Survival Guide, available on Amazon.
You mean the 4th edition of Chris Gore's Ultimate Film Festival Survival Guide, available for $19.99?
Yes, that book, exactly. But what I always try to stress in there is you have to be strategic. What are you doing? Why are you moving to LA?
Right.
And why are you... Now, you can get too strategic and then you end up being not the fun person to be around. There's a balance. I am strategic about goals I have, but when it comes to... When I go to a party, I'm generally there to have fun, and the guy that is not... I'm the not networking guy.
Right.
I'm the guy that's not there with a goal to meet an actor or to do this. As if it happens, cool. But then I end up being the fun guy that everyone wants to hang around, and then people say, hey, you'd be fun to work with. We should work on a project. I mean, that's how I got Paget Brewster to be in My Big Fat Independent Movie. That's how I got Bob Odenkirk, who does a cameo in the film. I met him on the festival circuit, would always be hanging around and say, hey, you should be at this film festival. Why is your movie not there? Like, you want me to, let me drop an email to so-and-so. So I would just, every time I run into Bob, it'd be a positive experience because I was the guy that was a fan trying to help him out. And then when I asked him, hey, would you be in my movie? You just need about an hour. And he did it, and he was great. So I think it's important to know exactly why you're doing something, what the end game is, be strategic about it, and that may or may not include moving to LA. I think there's so many disadvantages. It's a city that's 60 miles across.
Yep. It's
incredibly inefficient. It's really expensive to live. Everything here is more expensive. Everything from gasoline to, if you go to McDonald's and you compare the prices of a McDonald's here, fast food here and fast food at home, I guarantee it's going to be more expensive here. Everything is just jacked up in price. So
that said, welcome to LA, everyone.
Yeah, I don't recommend it. A lot of people come here and it's tough. So I would say really consider why you're coming here and give yourself a window of time. I think it was John Waters who said, try to do something for 10 years. If you can mark in that 10 years that you've had no success whatsoever, you need to stop doing that. You know what I mean? You need to just decide that's not a thing that I should be doing. So I think you do have to have like a window for how long you're going to give yourself to succeed at something. I mean, I gave Film Threat 25 years and successfully made no money doing it during that period of time. So, not to say that the other opportunities that came from Film Threat weren't great, but I really feel like it was something that I wanted to do for a much shorter period, but I felt I owed it to the indie film community, which was really growing.
No, and you, I mean, Film Threat was so instrumental, and I hear stories about, you know, the impact that Film Threat has had over the years with so many filmmakers, and it's, you know, something like that, and then branching off, doing a movie, doing, you know, whether you're producing or otherwise, you know, doing, you know, being on television, being whatever, it's all part of your personal brand, and one thing you've been very good about is kind of, you know, when whatever project you're involved in, people recognize Chris Gore, whether it's comedy, whether it's, you know, a project on, you know, like you're going to, you know, try to raise some money online through a crowdfunding campaign or something like that. Everyone seems to know it's Chris Gore. You know, it's not Film Threat's Chris Gore. It's Chris Gore. How do you manage your kind of personal brand and what you do? I mean, from a business perspective, I mean, do you really make an effort to consciously kind of put your name out there on things, or is it that it just so happens the projects you're involved in kind of get, you know, your attention, you know, get you attention through that? I mean, it's a horribly worded question.
I wish I had an answer for that. That's funny, but the one thing I just do is just I'm extremely honest and tenacious, and I think that people see that. Like whenever I do a panel, one thing that used to bother me at panel discussions at film festivals would be a filmmaker would sort of, in a very glib way, well, we had this great script and we got the actors together, and then so we got the $1 million. And I would say, wait a sec, back up. How did you get that $1 million?
Right.
Well, you know, and then I'd say, wait. So what did you say when you asked the person for $1 million? That's a lot of money. And I would sit there and drill them 50 questions on exactly what that was like, because they act like it's not a big deal, and there's usually like three main points that filmmakers get stuck at. It's like funding, it's writing, funding, and then just getting the film sold and out there. Those are the three areas filmmakers generally always get stuck, and that funding thing always bugged the crap out of me. So when I did my own thing with my big fat independent movie, I wanted to make sure that I had all my ducks in a row, that I had a whole marketing plan for it, that I had a fallback plan if it didn't get sold to a major distributor. Mm-hmm. That I also backwards engineered, so I made the movie for the right amount of money that worst case scenario we'd still make break even, and so I was very careful about that. But it's one of those things where I just never back down from a bad question like that, and I think that comes across in everything I do. I'm just very brutally honest, and whether it be whatever the medium is, whether it's Film Threat, whether it's a TV appearance, whether it's you're reading me in a book, the voice of me is consistent. I think people can see it, and I think these other upcoming projects I have is going to be a completely different side of me, because it's just getting back to my roots. Yep. I always wanted to make films. You know, this is why I started this. Why it's taken me so long. But I was a late starter. I didn't get pubic hair for the longest time. It's very embarrassing when you got to take showers in junior high and you're the one guy with the smooth ball, you know, the smooth balls.
I would just tell everyone I shaved.
Yeah. Now I shave them, so I'm kind of going old school. But what I mean by that is just like it's taken me this long, I guess. And also, I do, as dumb as it sounds, and some people maybe aren't fond of the vulgar comments I'll make sometimes, I make them for a reason, because it helps people to remember a serious point that I'm making. So what'll happen is that horrible image is in their mind, but they'll remember the actual point I was trying to make, which is usually about something related to film financing or something that could actually help them.
And speaking of financing and making points that may not necessarily be, well, let's say they're a little more risque than others. This project that you've got going on right now, FetishVIL. I don't know how I segued that in there, but that's the segue I'm sticking with. So you were last seen crowdfunding, FetishVIL over on Indiegogo.com. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that experience. What motivated you to crowdfund something? I guess would be the first question.
First of all, having done my big fat independent movie, I learned the experience that I really wanted to have the right amount of money to make something, right? And FetishVIL and this other project that I'm doing now, which I'll announce on your show. I don't care. It's going to be, you're going to see stuff from it at WonderCon in March. It's called The Last Guys on Earth.
Nice.
And that's a cartoon based on a script that I wrote with a buddy of mine. Buddy of mine and I wrote the script 10 years ago, and then Script never sold, but we kept talking about the characters in the script, and I said, maybe this is just a cartoon. This is just an episodic cartoon. And with The Last Guys on Earth and FetishVIL, I thought, well, I was attempting to get a new agent because my contract is up at G4. I'm not sure exactly whether I'll continue with that job, but I was searching around for an agent to help me sell these animated properties, and then began to realize that, oh, no, you can't pitch a project like this anymore. You have to actually make it. Mm-hmm. There's no like, hey, I've got an idea for this movie, I've got an idea for this project. There's so much content on the internet, whether that content is a web series, whether it's there's so much available out there that you could be a development executive and sit on YouTube all day, and you could almost program an entire slate of a TV network just based on talent you found on YouTube. That's how much good stuff is out there. So I realized, like, I can't just pitch this and take around scripts for these shows. I have to actually make them. So I thought, well, I'm going to make these shows with my own money, but FetishVIL became so prohibitively expensive because I'm not just doing stop motion animation. I'm inventing a process that'll make it inexpensive to do stop motion animation of the caliber of a Rankin Bass from the 1960s. Rankin Bass, those, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and Year Without a Santa Claus.
Snow Miser, all that kind of, those guys.
All that stuff. So I'm a huge fan of those. I wanted to do an ongoing web series about a bunch of girls who work at the world's most exclusive fetish dungeon, where they service world leaders and VIPs, politicians, rock stars, and celebrities. That way you'd have these celebrities coming on a weekly basis. It's a way to sort of a platform for some comedic social commentary, while at the same time you've never seen anything like it. And if you see the photographs from the teaser posters from the Indiegogo campaign, and you can go to FetishVIL.com, it's FetishVIL.com, or Indiegogo.com/FetishVIL. You'll see sort of the teaser images, this photography that I'd done with these before we started doing the animation. But I thought, I want to do a crowdfunding campaign because I'd looked at people who'd raised $5,000 for doing a short. And I thought, well, effectively, this is a short film.
Right.
So I pitched it as pre-ordering the DVD. Well, I calculated a budget, not only to fulfill all of the perks, because you can get a T-shirt, you can get dolls and props from the making of the film, but you'll get a copy of the unedited, unblurred, unbleeped DVD. I calculated what that would cost and did a campaign on Indiegogo. And the simple reason I picked Indiegogo is if I didn't make the money, if I didn't make the funding goal, I would still get the budget and then decide whether or not I wanted to move forward. So, because that's the main difference between Indiegogo and Kickstarter. So, and I like that. I'm a huge fan of the crowdfunding concept. I think it's really, I really wish it'd been around in early stages of Film Thread, because so many times I went to a bank and said, I just need like a $50,000 loan just to, I have orders for the magazine, but I won't see that money for 6 months. If I have the money from you, then I can get to that 6 months and then pay you back the money.
Film festivals are real similar to that. They really are, in terms of like, okay, we get all our submissions right up front. That's usually cash, whether they're without a box or PayPal or whatever. And then sponsor money we're not going to see till 3 to 6 months till after the festival. And then we got to live on this amount, but we need this amount. So it's beg, borrow, and steal.
Yeah. So I just think that, to me, the crowdfunding as a concept has replaced the banks, which have just not serviced this community. And what I'm saying is artists, entrepreneurs, and inventors. Mm-hmm. And I bought so many things off both Kickstarter and Indiegogo that were just projects where someone said, hey, look, I designed this new accessory for an iPod. What do you think? I thought it was cool, and I bought one. So it's a great resource. And also, as someone who does a lot of crafting, I actually have an Etsy page. I will make stuff like that. I'll create something that I think is kind of cool. And it's a way also to test an idea. You can see whether the idea is valid, and you can also see if maybe the flaw is your marketing. So I think that part of the problem was, like, I reached 50% of my funding goal. I raised about $12,000 some odd dollars of the $25,000 I had intended to raise.
And that's nothing to sneeze at. I mean, that's
no.
Yeah.
It'll pay for itself. Like, there won't be money out of my pocket to pay to get, the 30-minute pilot episode created.
Right.
The issue is The mistakes I made were this. I simply looked at my Twitter following and said, well, I've got 50,000 Twitter followers. If I get a 2% response rate, and that 2% response rate, which is like 1,000 people,
right.
If 1,000 people give me $25, that's 25 grand. That's a 2%. 2% is usually the response rate, but they need to have an impression of 7 times. They need to see it 7 times. Well, Twitter is not the only way I needed to be pushing this. I found that the most effective way of getting people to give me dollars for it was just a direct ask.
Yep.
That was the most effective. It was sending an email to someone I knew, an email or a direct message over whether it be Twitter or Facebook or whatever. And I didn't start direct asking people until the last week. I thought that was a huge mistake I made. I sort of handicapped myself by thinking like, oh, I've got this big Twitter following. I'll get 1,000 of those people to give me 25 grand. This is no big deal, which is kind of arrogant of me. And I learned that mistake. I think that was, I needed to work as hard as anybody else who gets that kind of money. And I feel like direct ask is the only real effective way of doing it, because people are all counting on that someone else is going to be the one that's actually going to contribute.
No, and then Jerry was telling me a story one time where he was talking about some filmmakers. I think it was filmmakers or somebody who decided that they were going to buy ad time on Kevin Smith's Morning Show. And that what they were, they figure, well, Kevin Smith has, 1.5 million people that follow him. There's going to be a percentage of those people who watch or listen rather to his show, whether, throughout, live there or throughout the day or whatever. We're going to get our ad play for $500 to $1,000, whatever it was. And that's going to, I think, that's going to pay for itself. And apparently, like, the conversion rate was abysmal, and they didn't.
Right. Well, the thing is, the marketing, because there's a great book that I read. I read this like in my early 20s for fun. This is what a freak I was in college. I would get like trade books and read them. I bought a book published by Folio magazine that cost almost $100 about how to publish a magazine. College irritated me from the standpoint of, so I just pay you this tuition, I buy these really expensive books, I read the books and regurgitate what I've learned from these books to you. Mm-hmm. Why don't I just buy the book? So I dropped out of college my second year, and any sort of area of interest, I would just I would just read about it.
Yeah.
I went to actually the campus of USC because I wanted to go to USC, but I grew up pretty dirt poor. My parents got divorced when I was young, and they could not afford to help me through college. Mm-hmm. I was working a job, almost a full-time job, and going to school. I mean, so what I did was I went to the campus of USC. I had $200 in my pocket, and I bought $200 of all of the film books that were required reading at USC. Then I wrote down the names of the books and the authors for all the other books for the USC film program. And I said, well, if I can't afford the education and the tuition to go to this school, I can at least read the exact same books that these students read, and that's what I did.
You're like you were like the online college experience before the online college experience.
In a way, yeah, but I would read other books like outside my preferred area. I read a book called Marketing Warfare, which is a brilliant book, which is out of print. I can't find it now, where they would talk about like how Pepsi is very comfortable being the number 2 soda because, in a sense, they're actually more profitable being number 2 because they spend less money marketing themselves to be the number 1 cola. And it was about all the battles between Burger King and McDonald's, sodas, the history of Coca-Cola, and the history of these companies and all their main campaigns. And I read books about advertising and marketing. George Ogilvy, Confessions of an Ad Man. I read that book for fun in college. All these books where I just wanted to know about marketing. I wanted to know about publishing. I wanted to, and just through osmosis to sort of glean all this knowledge because I know I'd be using it later for film and book projects and whatnot. So my career is a little bizarre. I mean, I tell my friends I like to keep my career portfolio diversified because, if one of them isn't really getting me a lot of money at one point, then some other aspect will, whether it be writing a book or television work or whatnot. But I am refocusing, and kind of like after having been 2 years removed from Film Threat, I sold it to Mark Bell 2 years ago at Sundance. But it's been like taking a giant battleship and turning it another direction because people have seen me as the film threat and the movie guy and a critic, and that's never something I really aspired to be. I'm just a film geek who has a lot of passion. but I
But that passion counts
and
for
even
something.
didn't yeah, well, I appreciate it, but I didn't even want to be on television. I really wanted to do these other projects. It was, for me, writing and then doing things creatively, making films, is really where my passion is. So that's why I'm just self-funding with the help of money that was generously contributed from everyone who put in for this Indiegogo campaign. And FetishVIL will be one of those. It's going to be a bizarre stop motion thing. And the one thing is too, like, you've seen every sort of adult content on the internet. In 2 clicks, you can see the most bizarre, creepy stuff. But you've never seen anything like FetishVIL. And it's also a comedy. And then The Last Guys on Earth, totally different thing. And both of them actually have Facebook fan pages if you're interested in. Look up The Last Guys on Earth or look up FetishVIL.
We'll have Jerry put links in the chat room for you.
Yeah, so you can find those projects. There's another one I'm keeping secret for the moment, but that's one of the things I do is when I come up with one of the projects, I grab the .com, the Facebook page, the Twitter. I kind of get all those assets, make sure I've got those ducks in a row, work on these marketing aspects while working on the writing and making sure it's a solid concept. I mean, this buddy of mine, Justin Stanley, and I, who did The Last Guys on Earth, we wrote the script 10 years ago, but every time we get together to work on other projects, we keep talking about those characters in that script. So it just kept coming up over and over again. I said, why don't we just develop this into a cartoon? So that's what we did about a year ago. But when I went to try and get an agent, they're like, oh yeah, you're the movie review guy. And I'm like, no, I don't want to be the movie review guy. If you look at the landscape, there's no job in being a film critic. I get a lot of young kids that will tell me, I love you on G4. How do I have your job? I said, you don't want my job.
No, I was just on a panel at the Napa Valley Film Festival. It was myself, a dude it was Kurt Honeycutt from The Hollywood Reporter, and a couple other people from like New York Times, LA Times, and San Francisco Chronicle. And all of them looked completely miserable in their jobs. Kurt had just gotten laid off from Hollywood Reporter, so, he's done. And then, I was sitting there and I'm like, wow, thank God I'm at least online and I kind of control my own little, empire, as it were, because to be a critic the way that they are traditionally is just, it's a dying world. It really is.
Film criticism is dead. And if I could do a title of my autobiography, it would be, well, maybe the subtitle would be, I am not a film critic. But that's, I have strong opinions about movies like everyone else does.
Right.
And I tend to, actually, if it's a choice between making a smart comment and a joke, first of all, I'll try and combine the two. But if I can't, my tendency is to go with the joke, which sometimes will actually help reinforce an intelligent comment that I may make later. But I'm not a traditional, I don't think I'm particularly good at being a film critic. I am a champion for things that are definitely, alternative. But film criticism is dead. The internet killed it, and the willingness of people on the internet to do things for free definitely killed it. There's an entire workforce online that's like, we'd like to write this stuff for free.
Yeah.
So why would you can just report the Rotten Tomatoes score? Why would a local newspaper even bother having a film critic on staff when they can go on the internet and they can abstract quotes from a group of critics representing online critics, and there they've got their movie review section. I mean, it's interesting to see the opening night of a movie and just sort of scroll through Twitter and you get a consensus of what's out there. There's still some really good film writers out there, but the kind of film criticism that I grew up with in the 70s, the Pauline Kaels, the Roger Ebert, all that stuff is just is dead. It's just there's no. I don't think that there's an audience intelligent enough to understand that kind of film writing that even exists today. That's how horrible it is, and that's like an incredibly mean thing to say. I'm kind of saying that people on the internet that read about film are idiots, except, can I just tell you something?
Sure.
They're idiots. They're idiots.
but do you think that there's
So a lot of it is just that it's good or bad. You know what? And I know what my segment is. I'm on for 5 minutes. I'm on TV. I have to talk about 3 or 4 movies. In 5 minutes, I have a co-host that is going to ask me questions with things that are prompted. It's 3 minutes of content. And I talk like I'm in a freaking race. Like I'm talking to you right now. Like I'm in a race. I just got this window of time to get you as much as I can. And I feel like every time I lose a race because I have this card that I've written down notes, and I have all this information in my head, and I never get it all out. But But
that's also the good part about the internet too, is that there is no race in terms of the
Right.
content. Like you and I could have this conversation for another 2 hours, and I completely agree with a bunch of what you just said. The only part I think that I differ on is that where film criticism does come into play is still in the independent film arena, because those aren't getting the premieres and stuff like that. For me, film criticism with independent film is more about publicizing the film in a way that there is no other way of doing because of marketing restrictions or whatever.
Yeah, in a way, you're kind of a marketing partner with the filmmaker. I mean, there's nothing better than discovering a great new indie filmmaker,
Right.
a new creative voice. And you're willing to overlook the flaws in the movie because you can see throughout whatever the technical flaws are that there's a new creative voice. That's exciting.
Yeah, and also, I mean, the one thing I definitely think that the internet killed is the invention of the exclusive. I think that for right now, everything is an exclusive for a minute, and then everyone picks up on it. I mean,
yeah, for about 1 minute. But the other thing is, tell me if you agree with me on this. There are more outlets covering movies today than there are movies being made.
that's a toughie, but I would say if you're saying all of the bloggers, all of those voices that are online, absolutely. I absolutely. But I think how many of them, and one of the reasons why I chose to focus mainly on independent film, how many of them are going to cover, say, my co-host's movie Stuck Like Chuck, or how many of them are going to cover my big fat independent movie? Unless they're covering that movie because it has people in it that they recognize. You know what I mean? If there's not with traditional media, if there's not a story there, they're not covering it. With the internet, I think that there's a little bit more balance there. And I had this argument with someone from, I think it was Variety at that panel. I said, you don't understand, that a review from you on an independent movie carries far more weight than any review on any movie that I could ever review, and that I could ever write. And it's because of the marketing cachet that I think comes out of that.
But I do think that
But I agree with you that yes.
The critics that cover the mostly indie stuff, I mean, that stuff does filter up, because I think that the more mainstream outlets will see if a film is getting positive response or getting a lot of play. So that helps a lot. And I do, like I say, I love still discovering some new indie voice. What I'm trying to do right now is take a guy that people have known as like a guy who has covered film. Mm-hmm. I made that, my big fat independent movie, and now moving towards, because I really think that episodic television is something I've always loved. I loved animation. I've done animation since, like I say, I was 9 through college. I'd been making animated movies, mm-hmm. and just realized hey, I want to get back to that. And I thought what the Indiegogo campaign would accomplish for me is having the budget of the pilot episode that I'd like to make covered by someone else's dime, because I've just gone through so many projects where it's money out of my pocket. I mean, even my podcast, Podcrash, I've had to buy all this equipment. I had to buy, my Libsyn account. I mean, it's like all this stuff that I've had to spend money on for something that effectively is going to lose money. That I thought, I think that there's enough, and it's also a way to test the idea and see what people like about it. I'm not sure that exactly the audience that follows me from G4 was expecting a stop motion animated film with graphic sexual content about a fetish dungeon. It's not those demographics, the G4 kid and that kind of show may not match up. Although I think that the internet, based on the response of people who just discovered it with having nothing to do with me, has been great. So, and also the business model for that is, it's not a show that I think is going to sell in a traditional sense, like sell to an FX or a Comedy Central or whatnot. I'll certainly, screen it for development executives at those networks or an Adult Swim, but it's something also that can survive as an internet show. Because the process that I'm using, it's a mixture of computer animation mixed with stop motion animation in a way that you will not notice.
And that's a question.
There's certain tricks that we're using that are going to make it less expensive to do, and there's a whole marketing concept behind it. And it's just going to be a fun, weird show. It's not going to be what people expect, which is why, unfortunately, I really should have had a teaser trailer, which you're going to see in a couple of months. But I held off on that on purpose because I didn't want to give anything away about the story. I didn't want to give anything away about the process, because I think once this happens, people are going to see a different way of approaching this kind of short. So I'm developing these new ways on my own, and I needed money to do that.
And one of our audience members here, Lord Bronco, asked, Chris, what gear are you looking at shooting FetishVIL with? And you had mentioned that you were kind of doing some new technical things to kind of get it out there cheaply.
Right,
What are some of those innovations?
Right now, I'm looking at shooting it with digital SLRs, of course, but I'm actually looking at doing it in 3D now, because I know there's a lot of hate out there for 3D. Certain things I think work for 3D. I'm a big fan of the movie Coraline. I think is brilliant, and in 3D so certain types of films look amazing in 3D, and 3D serves two purposes. One, it's really cool. I have the option also of putting out a 3D and or non-3D version, and I think it could work in another market. I mean, I've been toying with the idea of actually doing a feature-length version of a combination of a bunch of the episodes of FetishVIL, which will be serialized and then could be like a 70, 80-minute feature in 3D, maybe for the overseas market only. So I want to shoot the source material that way. It's really all about the lenses when you get to the DSLRs.
Right.
And then secondly, the other thing about 3D, which hasn't been talked about a lot, is the reason Hollywood is embracing 3D with such ferocity and pushing 3D televisions, which you can get now, they're cheap. You can get a 3D Blu-ray player for $100 now. You can get the glasses cheap. 3D is being pushed by Hollywood specifically because you can't bootleg it. You cannot bootleg BitTorrent 3D. You have to have all the correct equipment, and it would be so difficult to do it. It's just much easier to buy a 3D movie on Blu-ray.
It's funny, I haven't heard that argument before, and now that you just brought that up, wow, that actually makes a shitload of sense.
Here's my movie on 3D Blu-ray. Try making a copy of that and playing it on your standard Blu-ray player. You can't. So you have to have all this special equipment in order to decipher that in a sense. I mean, you need the correct player, the correct television, 3D TV. But all this stuff now is so cheap. I really just don't think there has to be more content, and even on my satellite dish, I've got 3D channels. I can't access them because I don't have a 3D TV yet, but they would be accessible if I had that. So 3D is another reason, and there's not a lot of indie projects done in 3D. Now, I'm merely talking about capturing the source content in 3D, doing a 3D version later. The initial incarnation of the show would be standard def DVD, which will be given to all of the Indiegogo contributors along with a nice letter from me. And actually, the thing, I'll tell you this, the ask letter, I'll just admit something actually. I think you'll find this entertaining. The letter that I used as the basis for how to ask people for money, because you're asking people for money. And in fact, I would do a panel at festivals sometimes where I would do a panel called, I would just call it like the Chair of Destiny. And I would have a panel of filmmakers and myself as like the host. Have someone come up and sit in that chair and ask a question. And a lot of it was coaching about how to do certain things. The question that came up over and over again was how to ask for money. So I would tell the person sitting in the chair, ask me for $1 million right now. And they would ask, and every time I would say, no, I'm not giving you $1 million. But it's a way for them to role play asking for money. You really need to ask people. So the letter that I used, which I almost rewrote it word for word and changed a bunch of stuff, was from Senator Al Franken. Sent a letter, to members of the Democratic Party who'd contributed before. Senator Al Franken sent a fundraising letter out, and I looked at that letter, and it was the most hilarious letter. It's just like, I know you hate letters like this. We need some money. Here you go. Okay, and thank you for your time. And then he had a long PS, and the PS explained everything. I modeled my fundraising letter that I sent out to people asking money for my FetishVIL crowdfunding campaign on his letter. It was a very short sentence. I know you hate getting another crowdfunding letter from another person. I can read you the letter if I can find it in my, but it was basically this very short sentence with a link, and then the PS had far more detail. But although I will say this, that just because I've read books on letter writing, technically speaking, people read the PS more than they actually read the letter.
I can agree with that. It's funny, even Jerry had when he was doing crowdfunding, he had a very elaborate description of everything that the money was going towards, the people attached, all this different things. And it was funny how many people would sit there and ask him questions of things that were blatantly spelled out in the text. And
right.
it just,
right.
you're absolutely right. Go straight, no one cares.
You can't count on the fact that people are going to read it. What you've really got to do is, and also people's time is precious. You can't waste their time. If you're going to send someone a fundraising letter, it's got to be something that's very simple, very direct. It's also based on your previous relationship. I'll read you the letter. I found one.
Oh, great. Go ahead.
Let's see. Wait, that's not the exact letter. I'll find it. I'll find it. I'm gonna find it.
Now, do you feel that while you're looking for that, I'm gonna ask you a question. Do you feel that it was, people were responding more, the people that did give money, they were responding to the letter, the way that the crowdfunding campaign was laid out, the project itself, or do you think that they were responding to the perks you were offering, or
I think the perks, because I kept it very simple. Mm-hmm. But here, I'll read you the letter. I'd say, hey, there's nothing worse than yet another long-winded crowdfunding email, so I'll get right to the point. I need your help to get my animated series FetishVIL off the ground. Can you click the link below to contribute $25? For $25 you get a DVD, or for $40 you get the DVD and a t-shirt. It's worth it, as I expect this is the kind of stop-motion animated comedy series about girls working in a dungeon that you would really like. Please donate here. You'd be doing me a huge favor. The campaign ends Wednesday, December 7th, so please hurry. Thanks, your pal, Chris Gore. P.S. And then the PS goes into far more detail about the project. And that's it. That's the letter. It was very simple. And I've gotten so many crowdfunding emails or letters from people that I thought, well, I'm just going to make mine an antithesis of that. It's just going to be a different way of going about it. So I think just keep it short and sweet, direct and to the point, and that's it. And so people responded, even if they didn't give money, they said, look, I can't do it right now, but is there anything I can help you with? And actually not making the full amount of money that I was going for ended up being a blessing in disguise, because I've had people step up and say, hey, what do you need? I can contribute cameras. Or it's I can contribute, sets. I can build this for you. I'd be willing to help out. I have a friend of mine who missed the deadline who's actually doing the title sequence for me. He's a guy who does titles for movies. Mm-hmm. He's doing the title sequence for me. If I paid this guy, it would actually be my entire budget. But he's doing it for me for free because he feels guilty because he didn't give me $25. So in a sense, I'm getting a $10,000 title sequence from him because he forgot to give me $25. So it's the crowdfunding campaign was successful. I feel successful, even though I didn't reach my funding goal, because it got the word out. Now the second round of funding that I'm going to do is going to be, hey, you missed your chance the first time to get the DVD. Now is your chance. The show will actually have started airing, and just before the final episode airs, you'll have a chance to actually contribute again as a way to support the project. But it did get the word out. I mean, effectively, I found an audience of about 1,000 people who are really interested in this.
Now, do you think that they were interested in it because you're involved, or because they like the project? Are these the same 1,000 people that are going to support the project once it airs because they're genuinely interested in watching FetishVIL, or because they want to watch Chris Gore's FetishVIL?
I think it's split 50-50. I mean, some people contributed not even knowing who I was or why. It just doesn't, my involvement was irrelevant. They thought that the project looked interesting. The other half were people that I approached. What I am a little disappointed about, I have to be honest, is, and I still get daily, a filmmaker that wants a favor from me that isn't aware that I have nothing to do with Film Threat. So I have to pass them along, to Mark Bell. Hey, I'd love if you'd review my movie. And I'm a little disappointed that throughout my 25 years of doing Film Threat, I've really helped out so many filmmakers, whether it be giving them publicity or reviewing actually fighting to get it reviewed on television, that those filmmakers didn't step up and actually contribute when I needed help.
Yep. And it doesn't even
really, frankly, I unfriended a few people that I've done so many favors for in the past.
Yep.
And not only did they not contribute, they said, oh, by the way, I need some help with this. Yeah. I finally was like, fuck you. I've helped out. So I'm really going to be going forward in my career. Unfortunately,
Yep.
I've helped out a lot of folks, and I don't regret any of it. But I really feel I don't ask someone for help unless I really am in need of it. And I'm just shocked at the amount of people and the gall of folks to just ask for a favor when they really haven't earned that. They haven't earned that from me. And I wrote the book for a reason. It's so I don't have to have conversations with filmmakers. So filmmakers can choose their own fate. So they can use the knowledge and use the advice that's in the book to make the decision for themselves.
No, and you have,
So
I think, have every,
like,
yeah, you have every right to have that indignation on that too, because I mean, as I was watching your campaign in progress, I did think to myself on several occasions, I'm like, this guy has been servicing the independent film community for well over 20 years, and you know, the only other people that I could think of that have done that for that long is like guys like Bob Hawke. And
right.
People who are staples in this industry, and if it's just, it blows my mind when people it is kind of like it's a free economy, and it does blow my mind on stuff like that.
Look, it is a very bizarre project. I can understand maybe not liking it from a content standpoint. Maybe it's something maybe you're not into fetish dolls. I mean, and maybe I should have had a more explicit, like not explicit, but just a trailer that gave you a taste of what it's like. But that'll come when in the second round campaign. It's just like with anything, if you're raising money for a company, you do a couple rounds of funding. This was my first round, and there really wasn't much to show other than like sort of an outline of a business plan, some photography, and you hearing me tell you what it's going to be. I think once people see what it's going to be something that's easy. And when they start to actually see episodes of the show, then they'll get it. They'll say, oh, now I get what you're going for. But it was a little disheartening to see that people that I'd helped and done favors for, and I'd come out and done panels, and I'd never asked for money, just, hey, show up and do this for me, can you write about this, can you tweet about that? And you know what, I don't say no, I'm happy to do it, but really, the lesson that I need to learn is I have to focus on my own projects. At a certain point, I owe it to myself. I'm doing myself a disservice by being so giving of my time, and this sounds like an asshole thing for me to say, but I feel like I've done enough already to help that community, and I've even given, like, here's tools you can use to do it yourself. Please do it yourself, like many others have. I have to do my own thing, and I have to, go on my own path.
No, and we have another question here from, he's not in the chat room anymore, but he was. We got the question here from Declan. He said, Chris, are there any other genres you want to try to tackle as a challenge?
Actually, the one that's after these two animated shows, which one is stop motion, the other one is traditional 2D animation. The show after that is live action, but it's I can't really say anything about it except it does involve live action.
Cool.
So there's like these 3 shows that I'm undertaking, and they're all different. I mean, look, I'd like to do an indie feature, that I direct. It's just nothing that I want to do is particularly mainstream. There's something that I have in mind. But one thing at a time. I'm doing these animated shows first, and then something. Look, I've been working on actually a comedy album. Of stand-up, which sounds so weird. I'm talking about crowdfunding, the film festival circuit, all this, and then by the way, I'm doing stand. But a lot of it is just an outlet for my comedy,
Right.
So it's just one of those things where I can only. It just sort of came from people telling me, why haven't you done stand-up comedy? And I thought, I don't know. I guess because I've just been on television, kind of. I get whatever you'd get out of performing in front of people at stand-up, I kind of get out of being on TV. But I didn't realize, like, hey, that's a totally different things.
Well, TV, I'm guessing you're not getting the immediate response from the audience that you do when you're doing stand-up. And I mean, I swear to God, I am the Elseworlds version. I'm the Bizarro version of you. Just, you're svelte and have hair. I'm bald. I'm fat and slow. Especially out in Park City where it was thin air, fat Nick. People actually say the same thing to me, and they're like, oh, why don't you do that? Because they also think it's good practice for being in front of a camera or doing what you do in terms of hosting on G4.
Well, it was sort of the opposite effect with me because I'd done TV for so long, like getting up and doing stand-up seemed like I didn't think it was a big deal. And my girlfriend has done stand-up a bunch is like, it's going to be different. It's going to be different. It's like, I've done panel discussions where I've been in front of like hundreds of people. I've done speaking engagements at colleges where I've been in front of 500 plus people. Like that, I'm not afraid. I don't give a shit. I've got confidence. And I think that confidence getting up in front of people is half the battle. The second thing is just having, content that flows. So that's actually the biggest challenge for me, is like those things where you've got your natural segues, you've got stories that you can tell. And so that's where I've been putting most of my work. The getting up and actually doing it, I don't care. It's that who gives a shit attitude. And having had that for a long time, I reached a point where I'm comfortable being in front of a lot of people. That I don't know. I guess I developed that from doing TV. So now it's like just getting up in front of people. Like that's easier than doing TV. Now it's a matter of like having really good content and having an instinct with the audience. So look, I just appreciate the people that do stand up that are amazing at it. And it's something that I love every time I get an opportunity to do it. But putting out, I really feel like I am sort of I've made myself a target, having a career that's so diverse and that's like all over the map. But these things all do connect, and it really just all comes from my personality, whether it be, in printed book form, on the web, on a TV show, in a tweet, or in a stand-up act. I mean, it's my personality is permeating it.
And I love reading your Chris Gore's Ultimate Film Festival Survival Guide. We were talking about it a little bit again before the show, and I really love things like the side margin stuff like that. When you read this, when you read your books and when you watch yourself on television, and I'm hoping when we hear the comedy album, it is a consistent voice, everything that you do. One of the things that you also talk about a lot, and I've been listening to it throughout this whole conversation, is, you do a lot of, reading on things, specifically things like marketing, sales, stuff like that. I mean, I went to, when I went to school, I did online, I actually did the University of Phoenix online type of deal, and I studied marketing. Did very much similar things. I just bought a lot of books on marketing, and hopefully that will help me through this course. One thing I noticed is that you have business plans for everything. You have outlines. You have all these things that you talk about with all these projects. That's not something I always hear from filmmakers. And that bothers me. Do you run into that a lot when you were either doing all these panels or gigs or stuff like that? I mean, do you ever ask them the question of like, okay, well, what's your business plan for this movie?
Well, in a lot of cases, it really doesn't matter, because frankly, a lot of the films that you'll see that are at Sundance, I mean, they're funded by family money. I mean, it's trust fund. It's a trust fund kid, and there's nothing wrong with that. So money is not a concern, and it doesn't necessarily need to be a concern. Like. Initially, but you do need to think about it. I think there's a responsibility in, effectively taking some millionaires $500,000 and saying, you're entrusting me with this. You need to show that you have a plan for their money. They need to have the confidence in that. The thing is, I've never had that luxury. I mean, I came from you don't really notice you're poor growing up as a kid.
Right.
As long as your parents love you, you don't notice you're poor. It's not till later, like in high school or college, you go, wow, I guess I don't have nice clothes. Or why do I only have 5 different pairs of pants? That's all my pants. And when they're done, I just wash them, or I'll wear this pair of jeans. You don't realize, like, oh yeah, looking back, it's like, I guess I grew up, our family didn't have a lot of money, but that didn't matter. It's like, I think they put the emphasis in the right areas.
The emphasis on the right syllable.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think that's important. But I've never done a project, or I've never done anything where I didn't have to at least break even. Whether it be Film Thread, or whether it be anything. It's just like any business. It's got to make its money back, and there has to be a plan to do it. So that's just second nature to me. I don't think that the filmmaker, the creative person involved, necessarily has to be that person. It can be a producer. So you've got someone who is the business mind, and then someone who's the creative mind, and then those two can battle it out.
And that's the thing I've always kind of talked about, is that because I come from before working in this film industry, I was a network engineer, so I got to hang with all the coders and the introverts and stuff like that, and then I saw the exact same thing on the other side of in this world with filmmakers, where the artist was the introvert and the equivalent of the coder, and they would be their brain would be so geared in one direction, but would lack the business sense on the other side.
Well, it's important, like, even if you are not comfortable making those decisions, you need to understand why those decisions need to be made, so that when you have a conversation with your producer, or if your producer is yourself, and you're having a conversation, because I do this with myself all the time, I don't want to compromise the work. At the same time, I need to teach the people that I'm trying to sell the show to how they can sell it to other people. Mm-hmm. That is my intention. So that's the purpose of, say, a teaser poster or a trailer or these other assets that help explain to a business person, oh yeah, I get how we could sell this. Here's one way of doing it. And then once they're in money-wise, I really don't care what they do. As long as they're not misrepresenting the project, they can come up with a completely different marketing campaign. This was the one that we came up with. And when it came to My Big Fat Independent Movie, I had scheduled half a day during the making of the film, and it was an 18-day shoot. So a half a day was a big deal. Mm-hmm. A half a day to shoot the actors for our posters, because they were never going to be in those with those haircuts and those costumes again. And in addition, interview the cast, which I did, that would do interviews that would be used on the DVD. So I did all of that in half a day. It was scheduled. They rotated in. We did the photography for the posters. And when I ended up selling the DVD rights for U.S. and Canada to Anchor Bay, and they said that no, they've never seen anyone this organized. I came in with a binder, and it's like, okay, here's all here's our marketing assets. We did these 7 posters. Here's our logo. I created a website that was so we could communicate with each other with 5,000 photographs, and they could just say, well, I need picture number 3621 we want to use. It's like, okay, there it is. Here's the high-res version of it. So I came to them with this big box that was not just the film assets, but all the other assets that they would need to market and sell the film, and they were ecstatic. And any project I do, you have to think about that. You have to think about, even recently when I was designing the logo for Podcrash, I worked with the designer, and I knew kind of what I was looking for and the color scheme, but I said, you need to look at the top comedy podcasts on Twitter, look at the pictures that come up. It needs to be something that reads tiny, like app-sized. Yep. It also needs to be impressionable, large size. It's got to stand out amongst this group. So just look at the top in comedy. What are the top podcasts? What do their graphics look like? And then I want mine to pop. Eventually, I would like to be in the top comedy podcast. That would be awesome if that happened. But I think it takes at least a year doing a podcast to build up a decent audience. I mean, I'm 3-4, going on 4 months in, so people are still figuring out that I even have a podcast. But all of those things are vital decisions. I've just got an eye for it, and I always have an appreciation whenever I've done, because having come from doing print magazines, I have an appreciation for that kind of graphic work, and I understand it. It's not something I can do generally a rough, or I usually will draw them out. And we even had a thing back in the old days when I was doing print with Film Threat. We would take an issue of Film Threat magazine, and we would have a prototype designed of the next issue. And I had this office that was on the 6th floor. We would have an intern take a printed copy of the magazine to the bottom, outside my window, 6 floors down, put it on the ground, and we would figure out what we could read or what we could see if it popped. Huh. Because it needed to pop, say, across, in a grocery store. You've got all this lineup of magazines. Is it going to stand out? And so these are just some of the things that I would just do for my own market research to figure out how to get that stuff to gel. So, it's important, because the thing is, and this is the thing that I think a lot of indie filmmakers run up against as a challenge, is they've got a movie that is brilliant and just incredibly difficult to market. It's a marketing challenge. How many movies they're just like, this is a great movie. And that's what I do love about actually seeing movies on the festival circuit. You're seeing them untainted by marketing people. You're also seeing them without having seen a trailer that tells you everything that happens in the movie.
Right.
So to me, the marketing is a big part of it, because it also it taints people's perceptions, and it can taint it in a good way and a bad way. But it's something I pay attention to with every project, because all the stuff that I'm going to do is going to be pretty weird and a hard sell. So that's why I try to at least give a first pass marketing campaign as a way to explain how this could actually be sold. And that's really, it's a big part of that film festival book, is giving filmmakers those tools.
You mean Chris Gore's Ultimate Film Festival Survivor Guide? Actually, it's funny because, I mean, I'm surprised that specifically with your knowledge of marketing from your various sources of things you've done in your life and self-study and all that, I'm surprised we haven't seen a hardcore film marketing book out of you yet. I mean, and that's...
But it's you know what, it's a narrow market. I mean, I don't make a lot of money on that book, frankly. So I could write a book, and I would make maybe $5-10 for my 6 months of time spending writing a book, and that's nothing to write home. But also on a per hour basis, a manager at McDonald's makes more than someone writing a film academia book. I can tell you that for sure. However, it would be more advantageous to me if someone hired me as a consultant to help with a marketing campaign for their film. I'd be happy to do that. And I could charge probably as much or more money than just writing one book. And that knowledge, it's also so specific. There's no one right path for anything. There's, I give you these sort of generic rules. I say, I talk to a guy that knows about poster design. I talk to a guy that knows about trailers. I talk to experts in various areas, and then just try to say there's not one right way of doing things.
Right.
But just like every person is individual, every indie film project is so different than another one. There's so many right ways of doing it. There are definitely more wrong ways of doing it. But I'd almost rather be hired as a consultant than write a book about it. Well, so if anyone wants to hire me as a consultant, just go to chrisgore.com, click on contact. That goes directly to me. I'm happy to charge you way too much money to to consult on your project.
And yes, Chris will definitely do that for you. So will I.
But it's going to be worse. It's going to be worse. It's going to be worth every penny, because what you would get, what
is
you get
the equivalent of 30 years of knowledge of the independent film world, and not only that, plus.
Think about that.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Well,
it's bargain.
Hiring you is the same as like hiring like a Bob Hawke for sales. I mean, I cringe at how many people don't know who Bob is in this day and age, and I'm just like, okay, well, let me just start rattling off, the slate of movies that he's worked with. And
yeah, but the age that he came around, it's just that there's the Sundances and the big buys and stuff that's just not around anymore. It's a completely different market.
Oh, totally.
And I think even the buyers would tell you, we have no idea either. And in addition, everything's changing when it comes to VOD. DVD is dying.
Mm-hmm.
But video on demand is a big part of it. I mean,
Yep.
Tim and Eric's billion-dollar movie came out on VOD before it's in advance of its theatrical release. So
Yep.
so people are trying to figure out, there's a formula for indie film profit and success. We're just going to keep working on this formula. It's like a mathematical equation that continues to change, and filmmakers just have to get used to that constantly. For me, what I'm trying to do with these few animated series I'm working on is say this is an animated web series that could also be an animated show on an Adult Swim or a Cartoon Network that's the same thing, Comedy Central, FX. It could be on one of those. It could also be a feature. It could also be whatever. Here's a taste of what this show is like, what the animation style is, and whatnot, and you'll get a taste of it. It's cheaper than making an entire animated feature, Indian animated feature. That would be expensive.
But what you're doing is you're taking something like FetishVIL and you're basically doing your own marketing on this. You're able to put together a project that people can see and you can pitch. I mean,
well, you can, yeah, exactly. I mean, you can make money actually getting millions of views on YouTube. There's a guy I work with, Matt Myra, who ended up making north of 20 grand posting a video of himself getting run over by a golf cart. That was after millions and millions of views on YouTube, but you can make that kind of money. There are groups of filmmakers, they're almost like comedy troupes, that post shorts twice a week. They're under 5 minutes. This is kind of the model that it seems to be working, is episodes twice a week, under 5 minutes. It's even shorter than that, all the better. They build a consistent audience. And if you can get in the multi-millions of views, you can make 10 grand in a month on a monthly basis making short films. Now, you must have a consistent output of content. You must continually interact with your audience in order to build that audience. But there are people who are doing that now, and I really have to question as a filmmaker, like, would I take a movie to a film festival now? I think it depends on the kind of movie. But I think that for these types of projects at least, I don't know that the festivals are the right venue. It's the internet / and/or the networks that are open to bizarre animation.
Yes. I don't even have a follow-up for that. You are absolutely correct.
The world is changing in terms of all this stuff, and no one has the answers. And I'm not sitting here telling you I have the answers. I'm saying I did the route where I made an indie movie and I took it on the festival circuit and played 40 plus festivals all over the world, and then we got a deal with the distributor. But at the end of the day, when I look back at that more than 2 years of work for myself, I didn't pay myself. I didn't make any money. I was lucky enough that I had a job that I was making money on the side doing television, and it wasn't as time consuming, but all that effort and all at the end of the day, I was able to successfly gain the disdain of my peers for just trying to do something different. So now, now I'm going about this. I'm going a different way where I love working in television. I like that it's a consistent day job, unlike film, where it's, you're done in a couple months and at least in the production phase. You know what I mean? It's like when it comes to TV work, it's regular work. And animation's something, because I'm doing voices on a lot of these shows, that I can do. I can dress. I don't have to wear makeup, which I love. I have to wear makeup for my TV stuff. So it's just a different outlet. It's also something I've done before.
You should consider yourself lucky. They make you wear makeup. I have to put on a mask. And usually it's a mask of you, and I don't know why, yes. But no. I hope people are just open to it. I hope they judge it as if it's something new. Unfortunately, I think that. Maybe with me being involved, it comes with some baggage, which is unfortunate. But I think when people just judge the work for what it is, I think they'll be entertained by it. I really have confidence in these, because I literally feel like all the time I've laid dormant has just been me honing my craft and writing and all this, and now it's just going to be, it seems as if there's this explosion of work that's coming down the pipe, but really it's just because I've been working on this the whole time I was doing Film Thread, or the whole time I was doing TV. It's just the fruition of all that now, right?
All of that was gestating for years and years. Scripts that I'd written that didn't go anywhere, scripts that almost sold that didn't, something that developed from a feature-length script to now an animated property, to then the design phase, to then, I've got, working on the title sequence for this show right now. It's just like I'm very detail-oriented when it comes to that, because I want whoever is going to purchase it to be able to see the whole package.
We all want to see Chris Gore's whole package.
But I appreciate that.
But now, in kind of in that thread, and as we're kind of winding down here, I'm going to put out the call right now for anyone who's actually watching the show here in the chat room. If you have any other final questions, please feel free to throw them over to Jerry, and we'll said throw them over to Chris. But no, throw them over to Jerry, and then I'll throw them at Chris, and we'll try to get to them as best we can. In regards to FetishVIL, have you gotten any feedback from the porn industry?
Oddly enough, everything is enthusiastic. And what's shocking to me is whenever I brought the prototype figures I brought them to Dr. Susie's Speakeasy, or I've showed them to people that are in the industry, even not in the industry, it doesn't matter. Girls react so strongly to it whenever they see these dolls that are going to be used in the show, because when they look at it, they think, oh my gosh, there's something about it that harkens back to childhood, because every girl at some point played with a Barbie doll and played with dolls, and there was something that clicked in their head when they found out about sex, like, hey, I could make these dolls do something.
Yeah, you can make these dolls have father issues too.
Yeah, I could make them basically sort of act out what I've heard about what intercourse is, and as they're sort of coming into, they're learning about sex, it's like, well, the dolls are a representation of that. So them using that in that way, it's like, oh, this was in my mind's eye. I never got to see this because Barbie is just this sort of like smooth, there's no genital area. It's just they're not sexualized in any way. They're just dolls. But what FetishVIL does is you're seeing these dolls and they're like you've never seen before. And I think it's not even much different than, I mean, there was that film Team America by Trey Parker, Matt Stone years ago, where there's a graphic sex scene in Team America, which got cut back. And it's similar to that in a sense. So what's shocking is how receptive people are. What I am bracing for is once it comes out, that I do think that there are going to be copycats. There are going to be people who try and do the same thing, which is why I've been so secretive about it. I don't want a show that's similar to come around and you know, whether it's something with a bigger budget or something just that rips it off in a cheap sense. But there's actually a documentary. The thing that shows that I think I'm on the right track is there was a documentary that was at Sundance recently called Meaning of Robots, about a guy who's 65 years old who for the last 11 years has been making a stop-motion animated puppet robot sex movie. And you can look up Meaning of Robots on the internet. You should look that up. Now, the movie Meaning of Robots is a documentary about this guy. I have no idea what the status is of his project, but just the fact that that's in the zeitgeist and the fact that that's out there and that's actually at Sundance and this exists shows me it's like, oh, this kind of opens the door for FetishVIL, because if the Sundance crowd can be accepting of a 65-year-old man who for 11 years has been making a robot stop-motion animated puppet fucking movie, I think that they'll actually like FetishVIL. So I'm really excited to see Meaning of Robots, and I hope to see this guy's film. I mean, looking at the trailer, it's nothing like FetishVIL, but it is like FetishVIL in the sense that idea is there, is you're taking something familiar, stop-motion puppet animation, and adding an element to it we've never seen, which is sexuality.
And I think that taking that sexuality, and especially with what where I think you're going with it is, you know, in terms of adding a comedy element to it, adding a kind of poking fun at that, you know, different modern conventions and stuff like that, I think is going to, it may overshadow the sex part and kind of do almost what, I think a lot of shows on like Comedy Central do, even if you take like the political shows like The Daily Show and stuff like that, where, you know, politics is the backdrop, but really what they're doing is they're poking fun. And
well, yeah, that's exactly what this is going to do. In fact, there's a website that we're using in which we'll be able to fashion faces of celebrities. You can send in a picture of the front of someone's head and the side of their head, and you'll get an exact replica of that head doll size. You can get them for 12-inch figures, for 6-inch figures. You can have one made of yourself. So there will be familiar faces popping up in the show.
That's funny. I'm not gonna lie. I would pay to see a Mark Bell FetishVIL figure.
They're going to be. I can't announce it now. I'm going to announce it in March. But there's some celebrity voices that are going to be recurring characters in the show. It's going to be weird. It's going to spin off in different directions. But the whole setting is this dungeon that people come to that has a whole rich history, and all the girls that work there and what their backgrounds are, and then all the drama that occurs from that, and then of course the celebrity of the week that is at FetishVIL. It's an ongoing story. It's episodic television, not unlike a show like Lost, but this time we provide all the answers against the backdrop of comedy that pokes fun at politics and celebrity.
All right, and we have one last question here from the audience. It's from Streaming Indie. I'm going to modify it a bit because it's not 100% relevant in terms of the content. He asks, what's to come from Film Threat for future filmmaking distribution? But obviously, you're not with Film Threat anymore. So let's modify it as, Chris Gore, what's to come, or what do you think is going to be the future of filmmaking and distribution, and do you have any examples? I mean, if film, and I think what this all comes down to is the question of sustainability. And, you know, you talked a little bit about, you know, you were making My Big Fat Independent Movie, but, you know, you were still on TV a bit, so you had a little bit of something to fall back on. How can filmmakers do what they are passionate about and still not have to survive on giving blood and semen?
Well, I really think that there's almost no way to get around the giving of blood and semen And I'm serious. They're just, I feel that the indie film world is really more of a calling card to get into something that can be an ongoing job. If there's a way, an ongoing job being in either television or mainstream film where they actually pay you to create content. It's unfortunate, but it's true. I think in indie film, making an indie film and taking it on the festival circuit is in a way replaced grad school. It's something that a filmmaker friend of mine said once. It's like, you could go to grad school for film, or you could just make an indie movie, go on the festival circuit for a year, and you would get out of that experience what you get from grad school. And I just don't think that there's a way to make money at it other than the people that are doing the consistent content on YouTube and making a living making shorts, which is shocking to me, but true. It's really a calling card to make film for money. I know it sounds like a depressing answer. I've had the luxury of having another job while doing indie projects, like even I am doing at this current moment. So I don't really see a way around it. However, I do predict in the next few years there will be an indie filmmaker that's going to release a piece of content that'll be so anticipated, that'll be so sought after, that the profits that it'll make after it's released on VOD or iTunes or wherever, financially speaking, would put it in the top 10 theatrical box office. I predict that something is going to come along that will be hyped in a way that it'll be the must thing to download as people's habits change.
Which is funny that we use that thing, because it used to be the most anticipated movie to go see in the theater. Then it was must-see TV, and then now it's the most anticipated thing to download. You know what I mean? It's just watching film kind of go to that type of almost non-commodity is such a weird shift in such a small period of time. It's funny.
Yeah, I wish I had the answer, but I'm a guy that made a movie that actually sold and broke even, which is better than most.
I was gonna say that's still a huge achievement.
Yeah, that's an achievement, but 80%. I saw a statistic once that 80% of the movies. So you take all the movies that played Sundance. 3 years later, 80% of those movies still have no distribution.
Yeah.
So now this doesn't mean that you should not. I'm just saying that you should be responsible about the way that you go about it. Like Chris Nolan, who basically shot his first movie Following over the course of a summer while he worked a regular job and only spent the money. He could afford one reel of film, processing for one reel of film.
Yep.
Film and processing, that was it in a week. When the film ran through the camera, they were done shooting. So that was 3 months of his life doing that, and that was a very wise way of going about it. He didn't go into debt.
I think it's just age-old kind of wisdom of just like manage your money, manage your expectations. I mean, you look at
yes.
Yeah.
Absolute expectations, because you have to be strategic about what the goal is. And I really think with indie film, the goal is to tell a story that needs to be told. And then if you have more stories in you, then hopefully and possibly those stories are at least mainstream enough to get someone to advance you the money for the movie and maybe pay you for the privilege of doing that. But really, it's a lot of the indie film world now is people that come from money and who have access to funding. It's almost more important to have access to funding than it is to have talent.
At Sundance and Slamdance, I definitely agree with you. I think that in a lot of the, if you want to call them the second or third tier festivals, I think that that's where that more indie spirit is still very much alive. I mean, I literally just spent, not last week, but the week before, I spent a week out in Park City. It was my first time there, but the amount of things I learned in regards to that, just doing all of these press interviews and stuff like that you talk to these people and they had done certain things, whether it's they came from money or they laid groundwork in previous years. You can't expect to just make a movie, go to Sundance. I think that's part of managing the expectations.
But also, there's really no excuse. I mean, you can make a movie. I mean, you can make a movie cheap. There's definitely a way to do it. As long as the sound is good. I think the sound is actually more important than the picture quality.
I agree with that 100%.
But the tools are there to make a film, and I don't want to be discouraging. I just want people to think about what they're doing and to accept the answer from the universe. If the universe says to you, you didn't get accepted to any film festivals, you've really got to look at what you made. Or if it gets accepted into a few sort of festivals, but the reaction is kind of negative, take that information.
Yep.
I think the smarter filmmakers pay attention to the negative reviews and look at those and go, what is this person trying to say? And take that knowledge into the next project. They don't take it personally. I do think actually, when it came to me, that a lot of the attacks on my Big Fat Independent movie were personal attacks. I didn't take them personally because I knew me transitioning from one career that I'd had for a long time to another was going to get people sharpening their knives and ready to carve me apart.
Yeah. Well, I think as a critic, you were fodder for that anyway. A critic, film, a movie, a magazine publisher. I mean, you were fodder for that to begin with. But I mean, now I'm doing a stand-up album. I mean, what are people going to say? I mean, I think that people.
I should just do it under a completely different name so people don't know that it's me and it won't be judged so harshly.
Here's a one. Bruce Wayne. There you go. That's the name that you're gonna.
That'll be my name.
There, but and I want to thank you. We've kept you on way too long, but I love. I mean, I could literally sit here and have this conversation all night with you. In terms of just your experience, your perspective on the independent film world, and it's great because I mean you're still. Talking to you about independent film is still and even just your career, the entertainment industry as a whole. It's still for me feels fresh. Like talking to you feels like it sounds kind of well, gay, whatever. It's like reading issues of Film Threat. It's like reading the Ultimate Film Festival Survival Guide stuff. It's hearing your voice is still fresh. And it still has been throughout the years, and I'm looking forward to, checking out the things that you are moving on into. And I think it's always different to watch people that you've kind of, for lack of a better term, grown up with, and, especially in like this industry that has moved ahead so quickly. That 20, 25 years does seem like a lifetime to a lot of these filmmakers. So to watch you go from one part of the industry to the next, I think is a challenge for them. But I'm sure that I'm sure you're going to be fine. No one's worrying about Chris Gore, so that's good.
Well, but I think that was a disadvantage for me in doing the crowdfunding campaign. It's like, it's Chris. He's got the big Twitter following. He's on TV. He doesn't need help. But I needed help in getting my project going. I think a lot of people dismissed it, going like, that guy doesn't need help. If it was just some girl from Ohio trying to get this project going, I think people would have looked differently at contributing to that project. Why would you? People just assume because you're on TV, you're rich and you have money.
Right.
I make a modest sum for what I do, and it's something I've learned to live just okay at. You know what I mean?
Did you ever consider putting someone else's name on that project just as a way to deter from that?
No, that would be lying. I can't do it. But
well, I mean, like, say your writing partner, like, using them as more of the quote-unquote front man. I mean, everyone's in the Beatles, but...
I do know that, like, once the show starts happening, I'm going to be fading into the background. The show's going to be less about me, and it's going to be more about the personalities that are doing the voices. The girls that have all been selected to do the individual voices of the characters, they're the stars of that show. Me and the animators and the writers will be in the background and we'll be there, but it's just that's the promotable element for me. And then also just the show itself, just the weirdness of it. So I'm realistic about that. When it comes to other projects, maybe I'll be an interesting promotable aspect. I think with FetishVIL, I'm not that. And I just put myself forward because I was still putting the project together and lining up the talent as I was doing the campaign. So I learned a lot of lessons about it. I'll take into the next crowdfunding campaign. And I just hope people, once they see it, will give me a chance and not judge it so harshly or judge it, it's that guy.
Well, I think that you've definitely got a good opportunity for that. I mean, you've got a great, a very strong base of people who follow you on Twitter. If you want to follow Chris, go to twitter.com/thatchrisgore. You've obviously have the history, and you sound like it, from everything you said, the one thing you have at least is the business acumen to sell a concept like this. And I think that is far and above what. It's more than what a lot of filmmakers I talk to and consult with have, and I think that is that's such a key thing. And
the other key thing, it has to be a good show.
That's true.
It just has to be a good show. It has to, at the end of the show, make you say, I want to see more of that show. And that's the stage that I'm at this moment.
And I want to thank you so much for sharing all that insight with us here on the show. I want to make sure
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me too. People are interested, they can go to the Twitter for FetishVIL. It's at FetishVIL, FetishVIL, and then at that Chris Gore, and all these other projects are on Facebook too.
Yep, and you can go. We've got the links for the Facebook projects here in the chat room. You guys can go back and search through the chat room here. We can also go to chrisgore.com and FetishVIL.com as well, right?
Yep. You
Perfect. And make sure you guys do check out, at some point, check out Chris Gore's Ultimate Film Festival Survival Guide. It is, it's all over the place. You can buy it. So it is widely available, let's put it that way. And, obviously, if you want to see, Chris's produced My Big Fat Independent Movie. That's available as well through Anchor Bay and through major outlets. Jerry was actually mentioning...
It's on Netflix.
It's on Netflix. Jerry was mentioning that he actually owns the Best Buy exclusive, Best Buy exclusive 2-disc edition. The 2-disc Best Buy exclusive edition of My Big Fat Independent Movie. So, you sold one. At least. So
that's great. I appreciate it.
No, man, and thank you so much for all of the insight, man. It's always good to hear the war stories from someone who not only have you been doing it in front of the camera, you've done it behind the camera, and you've reported on it.
Well, that's the thing that people need to know about the war stories in indie film or TV or the mainstream film. It doesn't matter. Let me just say from experience, the war never ends. It's an ongoing war. So when you think that there's going to be some moment where you can relax and take a break and like there's going to be that sort of perfect moment where it's like, I can sit back, I've achieved my goal. That will never happen. It's an ongoing war that you'll continue to fight, whatever the project is, in moving forward. And once you accept that reality, only then can you be happy.
See, it's like I want to mix the metaphor with the Batman thing, but the only thing, it's the truth, the never-ending battle for truth, justice, and the American way. But then we go into Superman, and that doesn't work. I completely agree with. I've agreed with pretty much everything that Chris has said during the show, which sucks for me because I love being counterpoint. I want to thank you again for coming on, and I want to make sure everyone. When can we hear Pod Crash?
Pod Crash, you can find the shows come out weekly. It's on iTunes. Just look up Pod Crash with that Chris Gore, or go on Stitcher Radio. You can listen to it there, and you can find it on my website, chrisgore.com.
Can't get any more simpler than that. All right, well, I want to thank you again, Chris, for coming on, and that's all we've got for Mr. Chris Gore tonight. I want to thank him for coming on the show. I want to thank everyone who did ask questions for Chris today. And I want to kind of just point out some certain people. I want to point out Streaming Indie, Declon, and let's see, who else do we have? Oh, Lord Bronco, specifically. I want to also go ahead and remind everyone that you can also get us on iTunes, Stitcher. We're all over the goddamn place. Follow everything we do over at twitter.com/FilmSnobbery. Check out FilmSnobbery.com for new reviews, interviews, the whole 9 yards. All of our Sundance and Slamdance footage is starting to make its way onto the net, so you'll see all of that soon. Also check out our Facebook, Facebook.com/FilmSnobbery, YouTube.com/FilmSnobbery, the whole niner. If you want to...
Can I just say too, this your podcast is amazing. People should be listening to this because you have so much really detailed information. You can listen to a lot of film podcasts and you'll get like, opinions about things. There's a lot of really useful, hard information on Film Snobbery. So there's my plug. You can use that audio. I actually got to go, so I got to take off. But thanks again, Nick, for having me, Jerry, for tweeting at me. And I got to take off, so I'm going to be hanging up. But thank you again. I appreciate it.
Now, thank you, Chris. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Gore.
Thanks. Take care, guys. Later.
Take care. Yay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Chris Gore. We are going to we're going to continue the show. We got more to talk about, but only very. Yeah, we got more show. I know, right? It's like forever. Jerry, actually, I want to go ahead and I want to talk to you real quick. I want to talk to you. We never got a chance last week to talk about the Sundance and Slam Dance experience, only because, and I want to do it briefly, only because by the end of last week's show, I felt absolutely sick as a dog, and I was for about 3-4 days afterwards. That's why my Sundance footage has been delayed. But I want to talk to you guys about that. Just very briefly, if you guys who didn't have a chance to make it out to Park City, I had an opportunity to go with the good film folks at Film Threat, which is why I want to kind of segue it in here. I would love to take any of your questions about Sundance and Slam Dance specifically, if you if you had any. Jerry, I don't know if you have any questions about Sundance or Slam Dance.
What was your favorite movie you saw?
I did not watch one fucking movie the entire time I was there. Not one. Not at either festival. I covered 2 festivals for an entire week, and I did not watch one goddamn movie. So that is interesting. But the reason why is because I was booked back to back to back to back to back every single day from the time I woke up to the time I went to bed with interviews with filmmakers. I think we're taking home roughly 30 interviews. We took home roughly 30 interviews with filmmakers, kind of split between Sundance and Slam Dance, so it's about 15 per festival. A lot of the Slam Dance stuff seems like it's kind of ahead of the pack a bit, so I'm just kind of doing them as they are in order in the editor. So it's such a weird environment. Not only because, of the location. I mean, the location has a lot to do with it. I definitely, if I have any tips for anyone out there looking to go there, yes, the altitude is definitely going to kick you in the ass. Also, you'll find that going from the top of the hill where Slam Dance is to the bottom of the hill where Sundance is, it's not that it's all like a long walk or arduous or anything like that, but the altitude really makes it a hike. It's really weird. And then plus once the weather aspect starts coming in where like snow, ice, all that kind of stuff, it feels like every time you take a step, you're sliding back a foot. So it's a real kind of, I see why not so many people from the Sundance camp migrate up to like the Slam Dance camp. It's like you either spend most of your time in one area or the other, or if you're watching movies, you might not even be on Main Street. You might be like out at the Eccles or the Yarrow or one of the other theater venues that they're, are out in Park City. Yeah, it's such an interesting, weird kind of thing. I mean, I felt so much that like the Slam Dance folks were a lot more fun. Sundance folks always seemed to be, I mean, not saying they weren't nice, cordial, and fun at times, but they always seemed to be like just so interested in like selling the movie or promoting the movie, or we can't talk to you right now because we're running, we have to go do another interview, or we have to go do this, we have to be seen at this party, or we got to do this or that. Slam Dance was like, yeah, we're gonna go to the parties, we're gonna go to like just talk to some people and get drunk. Everything else on Sundance seemed so much more formal, so much more, I mean, dare I say Hollywood, but I did. It was just such a weird thing, and I did a little primer using Chris Gore's book before I left, and I took a lot of advice, and I've said it in previous discussions. I think I've said it online in a blog post. I do have to give a lot of credit to Mark Bell, his perspective on from Film Threat. He took it over from Chris. His perspective on Park City, because he'd been going there for many, many years, and using and how to best take advantage of that experience without getting sick, is was invaluable, and I'm thankful that I think, and I owe it to literally to his tutelage on that for not getting sick while I was there, and at least staving it off until I got home. It was rough. It was an interesting experience. Jerry, anything else you want to Oh wait,
I wasn't there, so.
we did, yeah, but Streaming Indie did kind of ask a question here. He said, what types of under $1 million films actually got a deal? Who showed the best? Where did the difference between the official decisions and the audience choices stand out? That's a lot of those are questions for someone who actually watched the movies. The one big question I did get while I was there, and this kind of ties into your question, was, oh, what's the buzz? What movie's getting the buzz? I got phone calls from promoters, marketers, stuff like that, booking agents, etc., calling me saying, like, what's the buzz there? What's the, where are the good parties to go to? What movies seem to be, getting the most buzz? What's getting bought? What's this and that? I mean, and it was funny because you saw a lot of things change throughout both of the festivals, in terms of what was hot, what was not. In terms of budgets, most of the stuff that was there was fairly high budgets. I mean, I didn't see tons and tons and tons and tons of stuff there that was made for like under $1 million. I mean, there were definitely, don't get me wrong, there's, at least when we're talking about features, shorts, obviously that's a lot easier. But there was a lot of, I'd say the bulk of everything was like 700,000 to 800,000 plus. There were very, very little micro budget films at either festival. I will say that Slamdance felt more indie. Even if we're talking about larger budget films, higher production value films, Slamdance still felt more indie. These were films without distribution deals. These were films that were selected through through submission processes and stuff like that, actual programming. Although I will say, in terms of programming, the most common story I heard was, we were here years before, so we know people. We were here last year. Whether they were directed a film that was there that previous year or they were worked on a film that was there that previous year. And I heard this specifically in regards to Sundance. Almost no one I talked to was like, oh, well, I submitted through Without a Box and we got in. Like, that shit does not exist in Park City. It is definitely an economy of, I know so-and-so. There were people that were even talking about, like, oh, well, we actually, one story that stands out said, like, we actually held a screening for the Sundance programmers. Like, we flew them out, we had a screening for them, and we still didn't get in. Like, and that is a story that, was not necessarily uncommon. Now, some of them, obviously, the story was, oh, we held a screening for them, our press agent or our, producer's rep or whatever, arranged something, and, then we got in. So that stuff happens, and that is a really important, I think that's a really important aspect of like top 10 festivals, like first tier festivals like Sundance, Slamdance, probably Toronto, South by Southwest, stuff like that. South by you can still get into on your own merits. Toronto, Tribeca, stuff like that, I'm not 100% sure on where they stand at the moment. I think Tribeca is definitely a who type of situation. Toronto, I think you still got a shot. But Sundance Slamdance, it seemed to be all about who who knows you, and what connections do you have. And I found that to be very unfortunate. Now, audience-wise, I did find a lot of people who just came out there. I was talking with some ladies at a coffee shop, talking to them about Sundance, and they'd come out from Canada. They were just like, oh, we hear about it every year, and this year we just decided to go. And I'm like, okay, do you have any relation in the industry or anything like that? No, we just wanted to go because it was like, it's just something they've always heard about, and they've gone to Toronto before, the Toronto International Film Festival. So they're like, well, now we want to go to Sundance. We want, we figure we can go skiing and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, there's definitely an economy of audience that are coming down there because they are passionate for movies and they want to watch movies. But I would say that a lot of the audiences are the typical, the people who live in and around Park City, which I think that it's probably about as effective of showing a movie there as it is about then showing a screening of a movie in LA. I feel that that's a very jaded audience, probably a lot more snobby about their films than most other audiences. And I think that is not necessarily, it's kind of like the opposite of Toronto, where like, I think Kevin Smith was quoted of saying of Toronto at one point, like, take off the reaction you get in Toronto for your movie, take off like 20 to 25% because, you know, it's a very enthusiastic crowd there. And I think that Sundance is almost the difference. I think that people look for movies to hate there. I think that they love to have a good buzz. Like they want I think everyone wants to be the person who picks the movie that's the breakout. So all these movies will get early buzz. And then, you know, towards the end of the festival, that's when you start seeing, you know, the movies that are actually getting buzz. You know, that's when, you know, it was about mid-festival when I started hearing reports of movies getting sold. And then obviously when, you know, towards the end of the festival, you started hearing things like audience choices and stuff like that. So it was very much a learning experience. I really, really appreciate having that opportunity. And again, I want to go ahead and I want to thank everyone at Film Threat for helping provide that opportunity to me because, frankly, if I did not have a business reason to go, I wouldn't have gone. So, hopefully Mark does catch wind of this at some point. Mark, thank you, and I will have the rest of those videos out as soon as possible. No one watches this, but still. Jerry, do you have anything else you want to talk about before we sign off for the night?
Not really.
Okay, well, look at that. Ladies and gentlemen, fucking Jerry
I got in trouble for talking too much just now, so...
How did you get in trouble for talking too much?
Not from you, from talking on Facebook. I should say Facebooking, not talking.
Who was giving you shit?
I'm not going to go into that, because I might get in trouble again.
Really? Come on. This is your outlet, sir.
See this. I posted about some unfavorable feedback we received from a producer on the Facebook page for... Well, my Facebook page, but it linked to the Funny Devils page. And I just want to make sure that they don't see it, so I removed it.
I see.
That's all.
I see how
but
it
I'm
is.
like, yeah, I should probably shut up.
Yeah, well, you know what? I mean, I
didn't name names. I didn't. You know,
you can tell them how much I hate your stuff. I think everyone knows.
They're like, oh, Nick didn't like it.
I think it's really funny how our relationship works, Jerry, because how much shit you pitch me that I'm like, that's fucking garbage, but yet we still are able to remain friends.
Well, the thing is, though, because you're always like, that's fucking garbage, and then you read it and you're like, that's good.
Well,
you're
yeah,
like,
I have accused
garbage.
you. Yeah, I have accused you of being the worst pitch man in the world. You know, you pitch me garbage. But the garbage, you know, like I uncrumple the garbage you throw at me, I'm like, all right, well, this has merit. That's why I've always liked Jerry.
That's a horrible way of putting it.
Probably. And then, you know, and Streaming Indie says, don't let the neg heads get you, Jerry. And you know what, though? Fuck them. I mean, if it's one thing that, you know, people like yourself and myself always have to be aware of and able to accept this criticism, right? You were a film critic, and you know, you still kind of are.
I'm fine with the criticism. It seemed like it's just not their type of film. Some of the things they said to me, well, they didn't say it to me, in the email that was forwarded to me, some of the criticism and the feedback, I viewed it as a positive thing, and they were like, well, you did this and this and this, and I'm like, yeah, that was the point of it. Like, so it just wasn't their type of film. So, and it's funny because a lot of the feedback that they gave in a negative way, earlier this week, a different producer gave that feedback as a positive of the script. They were like, well, we really like how you did this, and these people are like, we hated that you did this. So,
which is funny though, because I remember you getting feedback from the Juno people. Remember?
Yeah.
A long time ago. I guess at this point it was a long time ago. It was almost a year ago, and you had gotten the feedback of like, oh, well, you did this and this and this, and you never do that in this type of convention, you know, and. You know, and the funny part is that when we've talked to other people, you know, whether together or whatever, or relating stories back to each other after the fact, you'll tell people that, and they're like, well, no, that's the part I like.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, the funny thing with it, remember Juno, with them, I gave them Freshman 15 first.
That's what I was referring to. I was referring to the whole, like, oh, you can't do this in a romantic comedy, remember?
Yeah, but the funny thing was, they actually said, like, this could never be a movie because of this. And then I made some minor changes to it and gave it back to them 6 months later when they were asking like what I was working on. I was like, well, I did some rewrites of this. They said, send it over, we'll check it out. And they were like, wow, this is really good. I wish this was the original draft you gave me. I'm like, I made the tiniest changes to it.
Yep.
I'm like, this is like pretty much the exact same script with a few dialogue changes and a different scene here. So like I thought that was really funny that they were like, this could never be a movie, and then they were like, this is really good.
Yeah,
They're not making it, but
no. But you know what though? I think I still laugh my ass off that the script that got optioned is Funny Devils and not Freshman 15, because I mean I love both. Don't get me wrong, but I really like Freshman 15, and I thought that if any movie of the two had more marketability, especially now, like with movies like American Reunion in production and stuff like that.
Problem. That's still the problem with it. I go to people and I say, like, I have this movie, it's a teen comedy, and they're like, well, this is great, this is the next American Pie, but no one wants that right now. They want to see adults doing crazy stuff. They want the next Hangover, the next Bridesmaids. They want, and I'm like, well, what about American Pie? Like that, they want a new American Pie. They're like, yeah, that's why they're bringing back all of them as adults now, and it's American Reunion.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, but someone wants to see a teen comedy, and I'm like, and they're like, there haven't been any teen comedies out. And I say, what about Easy A? And I'm like, that was like the only teen comedy in the last 5 years, and it was made for $8 million, and it made almost $100 million, just domestic alone.
Right.
And then you look at like the only two other comedies were Sex Drive, which was terribly marketed.
Yep. And, I mean, you have like if you want to go back a little bit further, too, you have Superbad and stuff like that.
Superbad.
Right.
And that was, huge. So it's like, it's not that no one wants to see teen comedies, it's just there aren't teen comedies getting made, and the few that are, if they're good, they tend to be doing very well, and if they're not so good, they tend to be breaking even.
Right.
So yeah. I find it funny that no one wants to read a teen comedy. And then it was really funny is we were just talking about that other one with Aubrey Plaza.
Yeah.
Start Baking, which it has like a somewhat similar concept to my film, but it's female-centric, and it's about like this girl with her list and stuff, and that one got like greenlit immediately.
Yeah, I mean, Streaming Indie says kids that bought teen comedies are now adults, and I agree, but, most of them have kids now. Some of them may be teens by at this point.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure they want there's an audience for teen comedy. There's always an audience for horror, because there's always teens out there.
Well, I mean, I think horror it has a much broader audience than teens.
I'm saying there's always teens out there, so there's always an audience for teen comedies, although I still think, there are plenty of adults that they love Superbad too.
Yeah, well, he says the new kids are into vampires and sparkly Justin Bieber characters. I said chairs.
He wrote vampires in Freshman 15.
Yeah.
Oh, you have one vampire.
You have one vampire. Yeah, it's such a fucked up economy out there in terms of what people think will sell and what won't. And I don't want to be the guy who says like, oh, fashion, it's circular, and it's not that. It's just that. It
is.
Well, there is. I mean,
in a way, yeah.
I mean,
but it's kind of funny, like.
But we don't see you don't see there are certain movies you don't see anymore, and if you do see them, you see like one, and if it tanks, you never see another one for like 10 years. Like you don't see a lot of road trip movies, like buddy comedy road trip movies, like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Like you don't see a lot of that.
Like they do like Paul, and then Paul tanks. We're not going to get another road trip movie for a while.
Well,
now.
yeah, but that's because it's not that pure road trip movie. It's a road trip movie with a CG animated alien in it. That's like remaking Alf.
Also, it was like their worst effort, like from everyone involved in that movie, which is a shame because everyone involved is extremely talented.
Yeah, no, and it's just and then people say the only one I could really point to at this point is like, and it's not the greatest example, is like Due Date, which is kind of that kind of buddy road trip movie.
And that kind of stuff.
Exactly. So I mean, between stuff like that, you're kind of fucked. And honestly, I think Paul was way niche. Paul was way niche anyway because it really attacked not attacked, but like in a negative way. But I mean, like it attacked from a marketing perspective. It attacked the nerd community, and I think that there was a certain segment of us that bought into it because of the people involved and because of the concept, but I think that we backlashed on the execution, and I think that that's the drawback of kind of marketing to the internet crowd, you know, the internet nerds and all that kind of stuff, is that if we love it, oh my God, we will blog about it, we'll talk about it, blah, blah, blah. If we are lukewarm or hate it, the backlash will prevent that movie from ever doing anything. And I don't mean that like...
And the problem is you can't always rely on the nerd community also. I mean, look at Scott Pilgrim. Like that, everyone was raving. They can't wait for it to come out.
I love that movie.
They liked it, and it still tanked.
Well, that movie was marketed poorly. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
it wasn't even marketed... It wasn't marketed to even the nerds. I mean, I think that they tried to market
They
it.
had banners up at Comic-Con. That counts.
That counts, but I mean that's literally marketing to that the audience that's at Comic-Con.
I've spoken to the producers of Scott Pilgrim, and they were upset with how it was marketed. They said that there were just so many things that just went wrong with the release of the film that they wish things could have been different, and they thought like basically what was going on. They didn't have control over it, and it was a shame, like, because that is a great movie, and just like it's just visually, it's such a stunning film.
I agree.
Yeah.
It is what every live action video game movie aspires to be.
It's
But
like
it
a
wasn't.
live action manga.
Yeah, and not only that, I mean, but not only that, I mean, the love story aspect of it is great. And look, I'm always very soft on Michael Cera's acting. I'm not, you know, I am that person who always says he's the same dude in everything. But I really felt that he was good in that role, and that he, you know, and I love Mary Elizabeth Winstead?
Yeah.
I love her and everything. And come on, I mean, you know, just the music aspect of it, the video game aspect, I mean, it hit everything. It hit everything. I can't say enough good things about that fucking movie. But I want to go ahead, and one of the other reasons why I wanted to extend the show out just a little bit more, aside from getting lost in a conversation with Chris, was because I wanted to discuss with you guys, we did an Indiegogo campaign probably about, it was a few months, it was in October at this point, so October, November, December, January, March, yeah. So, you know, it was about 4 months ago. Here's the deal. We may be doing another campaign in the very near future. Now, what your campaign helped buy us beforehand, and I will show you, we got a tablet PC to take out to festivals and do marketing with and stuff like that. It was kind of our kind of thing on the go to use, and it's been wonderful. We also were able to get a tiny, I'll put it right here, netbook that you know, was also for going to festivals, doing live updates, doing stuff like that, and you know, doing things that I can't do with a tablet. Also, I use it here in the studio. I use it as a tool to, you know, monitor the chat room and do stuff like that. Here's the deal, though. We don't need equipment this time. The equipment is actually, you know, that part of replacing what we've been using for the past 5 years. Thankfully, we're past that point in the career and in our phase of what we're doing. Here's the next thing that we are going to announce. We don't have the project created yet. We are going to be doing it probably in the next month. Within the next month, we're just waiting for our window, basically. We don't want to step on anyone's, you know, projects or anything like that. But here's the deal. FilmSnobbery is going to be moving to LA. We are, which is funny because you hear I am.
What does that mean for your co-host?
We'll talk about that in a second, Jerry. So the thing of it is this, and it's funny, I find it to be really funny to talk about because Chris Gore went on a whole tirade earlier in the show about how, you know, LA is just a very difficult place to be. Now, that being said, I'm not going to LA to be an actor, be a writer, be a director. You know, at the very smallest piece, maybe I'd be a producer, but even then, that's not what I'm going out there for. I have no intention of. I'm going out there to continue to move FilmSnobbery in the logical direction that it's going, which is going to be making the connections to pass on to you people to help you better make and distribute your films and get them seen, to help better develop your audience, to help you find your audience, to continue to report and have things that are dynamic that you guys can latch onto that hopefully will help you. So instead of doing a show like this where I'm shivering here in the cold in my jacket in my garage, we will actually have studio space. I'm working out the details right now. Can't announce anything onto that note yet, but I probably will in the next week or two, where we will have some shooting space to be able to give you an all-new Film Snobbery Live. We will be doing a whole lot of we will be doing a lot of things that will hopefully help you guys on in the future. I mean, the idea is we were going to move in one of two places. It was either going to be New York or LA. Frankly, the market tends to lean more in LA for what I do, which isn't making film. It isn't even to a point reviewing film, although that's part of what we do. It is making and enforcing the connections necessary to consult with, to help you guys. I mean, to consult with you people and to, bring you closer to the people who can help you make and distribute your films. The market, the end game market is in LA. That's where the industry lives. Chris was absolutely right earlier when he said, yes, you can make a movie anywhere. You can make, a movie in Portland. You can make a movie in Austin, Boston, New York, Florida, wherever. You could definitely do that. But I think that the market for talent, the market for, people who have the ability to sit and buy and sell things like this are in and around Los Angeles, or at least on the West Coast. I mean, I come from both a marketing and a technical background. From a technology standpoint, I can't be in a better place. I'm, close enough to places like Palo Alto, Cupertino, Redmond, all these different places, are a car and or short plane ride away to find new and better technology to show you guys to make these films, get these films out there. It'll allow us to really just have our finger that much closer to the pulse. Also, doing a show like this and being able to have Chris sitting next to me, Chris Gore sitting next to me, talking to him about film, it's such a huge opportunity. And I'm really looking forward to having that. Now, that said, that opportunity, I will not be going it alone. I will have a co-host that will be sitting next to me. It will not be Jerry Cavallaro, however, because Jerry's not moving up. What? He's acting surprised we've had the conversation. Jerry's not going to be. He's not moving.
I thought it was a nightmare.
Right. Well, Jerry's not moving to LA, obviously, and being that what we're doing is trying to make everything more dynamic. Having Jerry not be there is not really helping. So that said, though, Jerry, part of the decision that makes part of the whole situation that makes this easier is that Jerry is obviously he's just optioned his script, and he's going to be moving into production on a film that he wrote very soon. So if that's the case,
how if you keep getting feedback like today?
Well, I think that Jerry will be fine, and I think that he's going to continue doing that stuff. So making excuses a bit, yes, there will be a new co-host. We'll be talking about that in the near future as well. But I want to just kind of give you guys the primer that we probably will be doing an Indiegogo campaign again in the near future as a way to kind of help ease the transition as I move over to the West Coast. Only because it's just so horrendously expensive to pick up my life ostensibly and transplant it over. We're not going to look for a lot. Again, equipment is something we don't need. At this point, it's more just like, hey, if you could spare the gas money, basically, or a couch for me to sleep on when I get out there. That is pretty much what we're looking for at this point. So as we kind of come up with a set amount and all that kind of stuff, I just wanted to kind of prime you guys and kind of break the exclusive news, the absolute news. Yes, we are moving out to Los Angeles or the LA area, and we will be doing so by the end of March. So I wanted to make that announcement. Basically, you heard it here first versus hearsay from other people or hearing it through Twitter, which we'll probably announce it on, as we move forward and stuff as well. But I obviously want to owe it to everyone here to, tell you guys here we are moving to LA as a way to better serve you as a way. That's kind of what I'm saying. So now I get to go see. Jerry will be, Lord Bronco says Jerry will be the East Coast correspondent. Getting Jerry to even call in every week has been a challenge.
That's not true. I always call in. I'm on Skype before you most days.
Yeah, well, let's also be fair. Getting you to do anything but that has been a challenge. Exactly.
Well, yeah, but I don't get paid, so you're lucky I show up every week.
But yeah, so that's what we're going to be up to. I just wanted to kind of give you guys the exclusive on that one. So we will be moving there, and we will just need a little help in that transition. And hopefully, Indiegogo will help. Doing a campaign through them will help get us to where we need to be. So that said, I mean, Indiegogo or not, we're going to make it. We're going to make it happen. The date has already been kind of, well, the roundabout date has already been set. It's just a matter of getting all the details finalized. So there is no question we are going there. It will be at the end of March or sooner. So it all depends on how things go. And Streaming Indie, I want to thank you very much for that. You said I'll help where I can, Nick. I do greatly appreciate that. I mean, I look at what Chris does, and it's taken Chris 25 plus years to get to where he is, but I look at people like Chris, I look at people like Bob Hawk, who have made a life, career, opportunity of helping independent filmmakers, servicing that community. I'm pretty much looking to do the same, but I want to do it in my own way. And, we're hoping that, through what we do and what we've always tried to do, that we can continue to do that effectively. And unfortunately, here in Massachusetts, we're so limited, but with what we can do from not necessarily technology, but just from the location. I mean, we can't do very much here. So what this means, no more arguing with ISPs, over internet, broadband coverage. No more, having to worry if my computers or technical equipment is running well, because we'll be in a studio where, we'll have a 3-camera setup and a TriCaster and all these other things that we've talked about on the show for years. It's just a logical growth of what we've done and what we're continuing to do. Obviously, we'll still get awesome film festival coverage from us. You'll still get great guests. You'll still get great, we're gonna, keep on with our writers to try to get more reviews and content out, especially as I get busier working with filmmakers and getting everything set up out in LA. I'm gonna rely on my writers a whole lot more. So you guys will see a lot of more content on the website in the near future. Also means I'll be selling a lot of stuff. I've got a green screen behind me. In case you didn't know, this is a green screen studio. I'm selling the green screen. I'm selling one of the cameras. I'm selling a bunch of different stuff. So, and maybe even some of this stuff that we have here will be included in our, our Indiegogo package as perks. So we'll see what's what. Yeah, and even Streaming says, having a guest in the studio would be a definite improvement. I think it makes absolute sense. And I hope that all of you feel that way. We're not trying to do the whole sellout thing. We're not trying to do, Nick wants to go Hollywood so he can meet all the people, all the stars and stuff. Look, I had the opportunity to interview all the stars at Sundance and Slamdance. I chose to go another way. I chose to, and to Film Threat's credit, so did they. When I was announcing kind of even to them the schedule and the slate of people I was interviewing, not once did they say anything like, well, why didn't you try to get Chris Rock or Peter Jackson or Spike Lee or any of these other, famous people out there. They just like, whoever you want to do, we're all about it, and I really commend them for that as well. And I look at guys like, collectively guys like Film Threat, Mark and Chris and all the guys involved, and I look at what they've done over the years, and I'm just trying to evolve what we do and get stuff out there. So that's it. And so Jerry says I call dibs on the waterhole poster. I'm looking right at it. It's right there, but it's personalized, Jerry. You can't really call dibs on it.
Yeah, I can.
It's mine. It's gonna go. It's gonna go on the wall of my car where I'll be sleeping out in LA.
You use that to keep the sun out in the morning.
Yeah, totally. Oh yeah. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna sew together like a string of movie posters, and it'll be like the sun blocker in my front windshield. But that's about it.
Let's not mug that guy. He can't even afford Hollywood movie posters.
I literally I do envision my life feeling very like out there, feeling very much like Jon Favreau in Swingers, where I always have to justify that I have like a shitty car, but or that my apartment's not really that like well put together, or if I'm lucky enough to have a fucking apartment.
And you'll be talking to an answering machine because I'll be calling.
I totally will. I will be crying on the phone. I'll be like, I don't like it here. I want to come home. And he's like, why are you calling me? This isn't home for you. Call your mother. It's gonna be an adventure, and I really want to take our audience along with that. And I will say that once, for all the good that I hope that we've already, in the goodwill we've got with the independent film world, I really look forward to seeing hopefully more as we make this transition. And but in return, obviously, once we do get set up, once I have my own place out there and we get everything where it needs to be, my couch will always be open to an independent filmmaker who wants to come out and make their movie or take a meeting or anything like that. That to me is the least I can possibly do to help out anyone from the community that's helped us and supported us through the past 4 years, which that's another thing we never brought up, Jerry. January 31st just passed was our 4-year anniversary. We've been around now for over for 4 years. We're around. We've been here, so it's not as long as like a Film Thread or Chris or any of those guys. But damn it, we're here. We're still standing. We're still strong.
Are we officially toddlers of the indie film world?
I think we're something. We're something, man.
I don't know when that age starts, toddler, but we can call ourselves that because that's badass.
Yes. Yes.
Toddlers of indie film.
The toddlers of indie film. That still makes Jerry the Aquaman. You're the Aqua Lad of indie film. That makes you.
Damn you.
See? Oh, shit, Speedy. All right.
Well, once you start making it big, you have to buy me an Aquaman shirt, and I'll take a picture wearing it, and then you can put that up on the screen.
Honestly, Jerry, if it comes down, if I get a place out in LA fairly quickly and I get myself established, set up, the whole 9 yards, the first thing I'm going to do, because I know you're going to want to, Jerry, is if I'm going to make you buy a fucking plane ticket. You're going to come down, you're going to crash on my couch, and that's going to be, I think, where your first meeting with Nick is, the person who optioned your screenplay. The other Nick.
Nick with a K.
Nick with a K. Yeah, I think that's going to be the evolution of your first meeting.
He's Nick.
Nick. That's going to be the evolution of your first meeting with Nick. You're going to be, it's going to be, I got to go out to, you're going to say to your parents, I got to go out to LA to have a discussion about my production contract on this particular movie that they optioned. And your parents are going to say, well, where are you going to stay? And you're going to say, I'm going to stay with Nick because he moved out there. That's the conversation. And then while we're out there, we'll go look for Bigfoot.
Yep, that's it. We got to figure out what we're going to do with that because we have to hunt Bigfoot because that's important.
Oh, I admit it. Yes, finding Bigfoot is important because he's out there and he's hairy and he has big feet.
And we will find him.
We will. So, and someone here is recommending couchsurfer.org. I actually already signed up for that the other day. I signed up for it almost more as a fallback than anything. But I will be, obviously I'm taking my car to LA. So I will be making a cross-country trip from Massachusetts to Los Angeles. So all of you guys who are on the route in between, I will be staying at your house. That's really not even a fucking question. I'm staying on your couch for a night just so I can sleep and not die. So I'll see you guys sometime in the next couple months. I'm really looking forward to it. Streaming Indie says, I met Bigfoot. He drinks chai. He probably does. And he probably smells like patchouli. Wait a minute. I don't think you met Bigfoot. I think you met a dirty hippie. So, yeah, man, I got no more. The epicness of this show is as such that I am now drained, and we've done it. Literally has been a 2.5 hour long show. An hour and a half of that was talking to Chris, and the next hour was me babbling on about this shit and talking about Sundance. So, yeah, man.
Your co-host.
And well, yeah, and you're totally fired. That is the bitch about being laid off from this show. There's no collecting
You do it
unemployment
on
from this.
air.
Now I say we did it on air. You prompted me for it. You segued me into it, and on top of it, we had a discussion about it like a week or two ago. So this is no news to Jerry. We're playing it up. I'm not that cruel to Jerry. But yeah, I think Jerry's excited for me. I'm excited for Jerry because I know that Jerry's going to get busier in the near future anyway, so that takes the guilt off of me a little bit.
I'm still going to be calling in every week.
He probably will.
It's just going to be ringing and ringing. You're not even going to answer it, and they're like, I wonder if that's like a audience member calling in for a question. Yeah. Nope, that's Jerry.
I still want Jerry to moderate the chat room because that part's not going away. As a matter of fact, I think that part hopefully will even be expanded. So, but I think that we're going to be
the chat room moderator.
Exactly. So I mean, I think that Jerry's always going to be part of the family. That's just how it is. But
now what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to take that shirt that says co-host and cross it out and write chat room moderator. You realize how annoying that's going to be? Like, people are going to be trying to read it. Chat room on board.
Well, you mean a shirt that you will probably end up designing and selling over at directorscameo.com anyway?
Yes.
See, look, I'm good to you.
For that.
There you go.
Directorscameo.com, where you can get all your Directors Cameo needs.
See, there you go.
Shirts designed specifically for filmmakers and film fans and movie geeks and pop culture junkies.
Buy all of the above.
Exactly.
Yes. So, but yeah, it's going to be a great adventure. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I am scared shitless, which is funny, because when I graduated high school, I up and moved to Australia. So this whole moving thing is not. I'm not a stranger to it, but for some reason there's
less kangaroos and more gangs.
The way I look at it, there's equal amounts of things that want to kill me in both places. It's just, I don't know. I think it's just, I can smell that we're on the cusp of something. And I feel like it's taken us, it'll probably take us 5 years total to get to the point where we want to be. And I think I can just, sense that it's coming, and that smell of success, if you want to call it that, is also the smell of fear. And I think it does. I think I am afraid of succeeding, and I think I think a lot of people are, and so they make excuses, they put things off, and I think that we're getting to the point where I can't put things off anymore. So we'll see you guys in a couple months. And that said, we'll also see you next week with another guest and more indie movie talk here at Film Snobbery Live. Again, check us out every week, 10 o'clock. Eastern Standard Time, at least for now, over at FilmSnobberyLive.com. Follow everything we do every week at FilmSnobbery.com. You can also check out our tweets over at Twitter.com/FilmSnobbery, and also check us out on Facebook.com/FilmSnobbery, YouTube.com/FilmSnobbery. Check out everything Jerry's up to over at JerryCavallaro.com and Twitter.com/GetStuck. Follow our guest again that was on tonight, Twitter.com/ThatChrisGore. Check out his podcast, Pod Crash with That Chris Gore. Check out FetishVIL when it hits out and get more information on that over at FetishVIL.com. And anything else that we've forgotten, I want to thank everyone again who was in the chat room tonight, and we are totally fucking out. So good night, guys. We will see you guys next week, next Thursday, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, FilmSnobberyLive.com. Goodbye.